Inside the world of billionaires. What I saw shocked me. Went to uni with a girl who had a billionaire father. She thought the average American made $1 million a year. I told her the number was closer to 60 grand, and she glitched out for a second and said, "That's like half of my allowance." Eye-opening chat for everyone involved. That reminds me of the guy who used to be friends with a rich kid, who wasn't a teenager yet. He asked the rich kid if she didn't feel awkward having several servants around the house. Turns out that she thought everyone had servants, including her servants. They're not as smart as you might think, and definitely not as smart as they think. Men who look upon themselves born to reign and others to obey soon grow insolent, their minds poisoned by importance. The world they act in differs so materially from the world at large, they have but little opportunity of knowing its true interests, and when they succeed to government are frequently the most ignorant and unfit of any. Thomas Paine in Common Sense. They're cheap about really weird things. Bro, you've got a helipad to make it easier to get to your lake house. Why are we eating frozen Tony's pizza? Yeah, I had lunch with my billionaire boss and I forgot to get my $7 parking validated. I said I was going to go do that, and he overheard me, realized he'd also forgot to get validated, and he was speedwalking out there to get it done. Back when I worked at Blockbuster Video, this was so apparent that it was like a meme for us before memes really existed. You could very easily predict the likelihood that someone would pay their late fee based on the vehicle they were driving. If it was a beta car with no hubcaps, yep, my bad, I'll pay for that now. If it was a BMW, a Mercedes, Cadillac, or something like that, how dare you? I refuse to pay that $1 late fee. It was only a day late. This is an outrage. I want the manager immediately. It was seriously insane. The people that obviously didn't have much money, they'd just peel off the bills and pay their crap. The wealthy people that could easily afford it, they were the ones that would go frickin' thermonuclear over a literal dollar. And I don't just mean angry about the fee, I mean straight up grown men bullying 16-year-old girls, screaming, "You stupid fricking B-word, I'm not paying that crap, F you," and making them cry. Which I, of course, was like, yeah, you can just get out now, you're banned, we're closing your account. You're not going to come in here and talk that way to my staff. Then of course they'd call corporate, and corporate would fold immediately, throw them a free $50 gift card for the inconvenience charged against my store, I'd get a big old black mark on my file and end up getting berated about it in my weekly conference call with the district manager. I wouldn't have been surprised if a customer came in and beat on one of us, and corporate threw them a gift card for the bruises they got on their hands. It was that egregious. There was literally nothing we could say. Corporate's thought process was, if we're involved at all, that means the store effed up. It doesn't matter how, it's their fault. On the other side of the equation, of course, if we cut any serious breaks on late fees and crap like that, we'd get a black mark there too. So literally damned no matter what we do. I do wonder why this kind of outburst would be such a big thing to them, because it's probably not about that dollar, right? On some level, I reckon it has to be about them not feeling like they're in control for once. Like they're beholden to literally anyone else instead of swanning around swannily like the rich Lord Swans of Swan Lake that they see themselves as. But there are evidently people who think this cheapness doesn't apply to all the rich people in our next answers. Money is just this thing that's there. Nobody is really fussed about it, mainly expenses when it comes to going out or shopping. It's like having running water to them. It's there and perfectly normal, but it would be devastating if you didn't have it. My ex-wife was in a wealthy family. Her friends were even more wealthy. I'm talking about the kind of wealth where I met a guy who had a room bigger than most people's apartments, and it was dedicated to a single Egyptian vase in the middle. I never asked why. I could tell you all sorts of weird stories. With that said, what surprised me most about how they operate is that the money is literally never a thought to them. Like, quite literally. Pause and take a moment to think about how money for the average person rules much of their life. They worry about bills, groceries, and budgeting. Now consider that there are people out there who grew up never needing to think about any of that. For all intents and purposes, from their perspective, everything feels free. Due to this, since money isn't a factor, a lot of their thinking is around resources. Who are you connected to? What can you obtain? And boy do they love rarity and exclusivity. That's their essential means of communication at their level. It's never how much, it's always what do you want in exchange. Now that I'm thinking about this out loud, they essentially revert back to traditional barter trade. As a fun extra, my ex-wife had a friend that we visited often. You know those trophy mount type things where people just put the heads of animals on them, like taxidermied deer? Well, this guy had the same mounts, except for plushies. He had about a dozen of them. They weren't him just taking stuffed bears and ripping the heads off or anything like that. They looked professionally made, just plushy versions of the animal. They had button eyes and were funny colors. It's just odd that they were trophies, you know? I could rant about them all day, so I'll just stop there. Worked on Capitol Hill for 2 years. Had a congressperson tell me, "We make the rules here, we don't have to follow them." That was 15 years ago, and I haven't forgot. Okay, if you must know, Todd Akin was the person, and maybe that's not so surprising. There are different classes of rich people, and they don't interact. When I was younger, I was in a really bad environment. Gangs, substances, career criminal kind of bad. Due to an insane turn of events, I ended up in the high end of the other lifestyle. I'm talking hugely wealthy, nationally powerful kind of people. What genuinely surprised me was how similar the two circles were, but how differently they're viewed. The wealthy women I was around? They were doing the same substances as the other trafficked teenagers I was a victim with. Corruption to mind-bending degrees. Criminal behavior is just casually justified to them. The two circles behaved exactly the same. They were just viewed wildly differently by society. Oh, this is a good one, as I used to work for a wealthy lady who had been a smack addict many years prior, and who was open about that. She'd used her position in her job at the time to fund her habit using her father's investment money, which she controlled as part of her job. Really serious crime. At the end of the day, he forgave her, her family put her in rehab, and she got clean. What struck me about her entire story is that she didn't take accountability for any of it. My dad always wanted a boy growing up and hated that he had a girl and was hard on me, so I didn't feel bad stealing all of his money. And my boyfriend got me into smack because he liked doing it and I wanted him to like me. The accolades that she got from her customers and via socials for her bravery were endless, as she's a wealthy, beautiful woman. Can you imagine what would happen if someone robbed your business because they needed money for substances? Would society give them a friendly pat on the back? Piano performance put me in the middle of many wealthy and elite circles across the years. Some of these people are pure narcissists, behaving as if everybody is their servant. But it was eye-opening to find out how many of these wealthy people were miserable in their lives. I mean, literally emotionally desperate to feel some connection to something. Even though I was just barely scraping by financially, some of these wealthy people were strangely clingy and ingratiating, as if they were drowning in their world and needed to grab onto something. That made it easy to relax in those circles. It exploded the social myth about the wealthy, powerful elites are your betters. And the funny thing is that an understated confidence and self-respect greatly cut down the number of people who treated me as a servant. Those sorts of people were apparently always picking up on those subtle social cues in ways I hadn't truly grasped before. I used to deliver inflatable bouncy houses to little kids' birthday parties. If the client was a run-of-the-mill working-class family, they smiled, thanked me, and paid the rental fee. Every time I delivered to the rich neighborhoods, they'd complain and want to haggle. But it's for the children. Really crappy manipulative crap, like they expected charity. At my job, we do record keeping for the board of directors. It's a big company. Some of them are actual billionaires from their own businesses. My former teammate, who had been there for years, knew a lot of them pretty well, and they'd call up from time to time to get info about their taxes, or get in touch with retired executives. So we have drawers full of company swag that was used over the years for outings, meeting prep, holiday gifts, or expos. There's this one guy, he hasn't been on the board for years. He'll call up from time to time to get company-branded lip balm. My teammate would just order them by the dozen and send them to him, and be all flattered that such an important person knew her phone number and would spend 3 minutes chit-chatting with her once every few years. He has no affiliation with the company anymore. He's not doing promotions. He's just this 80-year-old billionaire who found a free source of chapstick for life. In defense of that guy, maybe he's not pinching pennies. Maybe he's just really bitter and hate-filled and wants to screw his old company just a little bit more in the only way he has access to. Honestly though, I kinda love that story, because I also love free stuff. How untouched they are by reality. A student spilt water on their desk at school in Dubai. When asked to clean it up, she said, "Anna?" meaning me, and proceeded to call her nanny to wipe it off for her. As an Arab, I frickin' hate rich Arabs. I meet them from time to time, and they always tee me off. Seriously, they live in a completely different world, and when I meet their daughters, they're always insanely picky about how rich their future husband is going to be, and how much they think Western feminists are stupid for not wanting to marry a rich man and live comfortably. And I'm like, where the frick is women supporting women? All I can do is smile and laugh because I'm seen as the crazy one. The culture surrounding wealth in wealthy Arab countries is extremely shallow and obnoxious, and despite the fact that it's full of Muslims, their behavior doesn't fall short of being insanely haram. Eesh. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to Am I the Genius? I married rich and I have a number of rich friends-in-law. Most of them aren't bad people. There's just these insane breaks in reality because they lack broader context. A friend didn't realize that steak was expensive because their parents have it so frequently. They thought it was similar to meatloaf or peanut butter and jelly, where it's a commonly shared everyday food experience. Generally, their critical thinking is pretty good. They've attended good schools their whole life. But at the same time, I think they can view themselves as exceptional rather than just, privileged, if that makes sense. Like they worked hard to get into good schools, but also they went to top high schools, had access to tutors, academic legacies, and they could focus on their education rather than working. Similarly, they can be very emotionally sensitive. It's not a bad thing, but I think they're more used to having their feelings validated than the rest of us. So sometimes I've noticed that they can lack the ability to compartmentalize. It's not true for all of them, but it's probably a thing that they didn't have to develop coping strategies for. I would say that despite the fact that they've all obviously grown up super wealthy, the vast majority still refer to themselves as upper middle class. It's like because they only have summer home money rather than yacht money, that they aren't actually rich. It's not all of them, but one person in particular, when they were in graduate school, they were temporarily cut off from the family credit card. They had to make a budget for meals, and they absolutely didn't know how. So they went to Costco and got a pallet of canned baked beans, and proceeded to eat them cold in their apartment. Some of that is certainly performative, but their idea of not having money somehow became being an early 20th century boxcar hobo. What, you think you're too good for the Costco pallet of baked beans? Some of us have to live in the real world here. It's the eating them cold thing that does it for me, you understand. The lack of consideration with money. I helped some folks book a vacation to Disney, and the woman spent 20 grand before she'd even told her husband that they were going on vacation. They buy a whole different kind of groceries, too. Grass-fed butter, $7 per half gallon of milk, and I'm over here going, okay, I've got this Kirkland butter, feeling pretty good. And then I see their fridge. When I was a college RA, I knew one of my residents was unfathomably wealthy. But I didn't understand how truly out of touch she was until we solved the case of the missing bathroom clothing. After 4 months of her living in the dorms, she came to me somewhat perturbed, saying, "Hey, I think someone's been stealing my clothes." I asked, "Oh no, when and where did they go missing? From your room? The lounge?" She paused and kind of loosely shared, "It was hard to notice at first, but I think they're mostly going missing from the bathroom." Oh no. I'm so sorry, that must be so scary and uncomfortable, leaving the showers with just your towel. I wish you'd told me sooner. How often did that happen? She looked confused and said, "Well, no, it's fine. I had my towel and lounge set. I leave my clothes in the bathroom where they always go, but I just realized I haven't gotten any of them back." Getting them back? From leaving them in the bathroom? And she looked at me like I was dumb. Yeah. Are you just leaving your clothes in the bathroom? Yeah. Why are you doing that? So that they get cleaned. This girl had been leaving her clothes in the communal bathroom every day, expecting them to get laundered and returned to her dorm room, and didn't realize until 4 months later that someone wasn't on duty to do her laundry for her. She had just been cycling through her many, many other clothes and buying new things. We found most of her stuff in the lost and found. She honestly couldn't really tell if she was missing more things. I will give her credit. She took everything in stride, and with a little help from her roommate, coordinated to pay for a laundry service to pick up her clothes every week. My friend works for 1%ers. Nobody likes free stuff more than wealthy people. I found that while some wealthy people are perfectly happy and content in life, often those who actually had to work for wealth rather than inherit, a majority of them are quite miserable because they've got nothing left to strive for and no obstacles to overcome. They have no sense of perseverance, and when a tiny thing goes wrong, their world crumbles. I truly believe that past a certain point of fiscal comfort, having more money doesn't make one happier. I've been in their world for decades, and in my humble opinion, only about 1 in 50 of them are doing well. A lot of the time they don't know true happiness or friendship at all, and often there's a weird denial about that. This whole happiness threshold you mention has been debated a lot. It actually annoys many money people. They like to deny that it exists, and love studies that suggest that more money equals more happiness. But I agree, and the happiest people I know are simply comfortable without being ridiculously rich. They're high schoolers all over again. So much drama and clique nonsense. A lot of them are on second or third marriages or in between spouses, and there's hookups and love triangles all over the place. Bob gets a new golf cart, so Joe has to get a newer golf cart with better sound system. Brian gets a new boat, so Rick has to get a bigger one. Tony gets a private jet, so Mike has to get a newer one. I've changed all the names for anonymity. Not that any of them use Reddit, they're all Facebook people. I really thought they'd all be more mature than that and above such petty things, but no. Well, if there's one thing we can take away here, folks, it's that even rich people have multitudes. Given the variety and conflicting nature of some of these stories, we have a full range from hard-working go-getters and well-meaning dum-dums, all the way to the cartoonishly, stupidly mean and evil ones. We should still be taxing the hell out of all of them, though. Every extremely wealthy person I've ever personally known was incredibly lazy, but thought that they were exceptionally hardworking, just oblivious about how much harder the average working class or poor person is compared to them, and how hard life in general is for people. I don't know if lazy is necessarily how I'd categorize the ones I've met, but the obliviousness has been my experience as well. They're not just being jerks when they act completely aloof about how anyone could be poor, they truly don't realize the built-in privilege they've got. They think, I went to school, I worked hard to get good grades, then I got a job just like everyone else. But they have no concept that they went to the best schools, were supported by every possible external opportunity, got a high-paying job almost certainly based on who their family knows or the opportunities wealth afforded them. They've never once actually worried about what happens if they can't bring in enough income. I've met a surprising number of people my age, millennial, whose parents paid for their house. Things like that are foregone conclusions in their world because of generational wealth. But as a checklist, it looks the same: school, job, and house, and they don't think of it beyond that. I was never exactly in their social circle, but I dated a guy with very wealthy parents. The thing that always surprised me the most is that while they had very expensive things, they didn't take very good care of them, and while their house wasn't messy, it was dirty. Like, they didn't dust or clean the windows and stuff like that, and you could tell that things just sat there for a very long time. I'm surprised they didn't have house cleaners. Me too, actually. They didn't even have lawn care. It was my boyfriend's chore. They had a lot of land and a tennis court. They were like single-digit millionaires. The substance use. Yep, I always kind of backhanded talked about how, oh yeah, the rich and powerful in my country are spaced-out green herb users. What I didn't know or truly comprehend was just how many of them were completely blitzed out of their gosh darn minds anytime they weren't in front of others, and sometimes even when they were. I got involved for a short time with my extended family who, where I live, have been involved with various forms of government and power for decades, and it was an eye-opening experience. And I'm not talking about blazing a sneaky joint out back between meetings. I'm talking government officials having vials of happy powder inside their jackets, popping high-end prescriptions in the back of their car on their way to vote on something, drinks out by the pool while your aide brings you your downers. Uppers were a big thing, to the point where watching them be like, hey man, I've got to meet with unnamed influential private citizen. You got any on you? Lawyers, district representatives, private capital investors, every one of them was just waiting for the public to leave so they could get their fix. I was briefly involved with a very wealthy woman, so I got to hang out with her social circle. Most people I met who had money, whether they actually earned it themselves or were born into it, felt that being rich meant that they were somehow special or gifted, and poor people weren't. Their thought process was basically, if they were smarter or harder working, they'd be rich too. In short, rich people believe poor people deserve to be poor. It's a character flaw to not have money. Corruption to them is not a big deal. I agree. I started noticing that moral values is a middle-class thing. I used to do HVAC, and one employer seemed to exclusively do rich people and their vacation homes. We usually dealt with a property manager to get in. One home had 6 furnaces, it was so big, and nobody was in it. Property manager said they'd come for a weekend once in a while, paid for landscaping and cleaning year-round. Oh, but they wanted the $10 discount on furnace maintenance for signing up early. Unbelievable ocean horror stories from real sailors. During World War II, my dad, who was a wireless operator on a minesweeper, passed by a German pilot waving frantically from his still-floating aircraft in the North Atlantic. They were under strict orders not to stop because of the danger of submarines, so they left the poor guy to certain death. My dad died a couple of years ago, but this incident haunted him throughout his life. He wept about it even in his last few hours. Sailing around in the Arabian Gulf, you could look out and see flaming flares from all of the oil rigs. You'd get so used to blackness when you're out at sea at night, and suddenly you'd see massive pillars of fire rising from the ocean all around you. I used to work on those oil rigs in that area. I used to sit on the helicopter deck and stare out at those flares like lampposts in a grass field. It was a beautiful sight. Fog. 360 degrees of thick fog. You could hardly see a couple of feet in front of your face. Very creepy, and waterspouts. Those are pretty cool though. You forgot the part where another boat slowly emerges out of the fog, passing you within arm's reach, all while there is no sign of a crew. It doesn't take long, and without a sound, it vanishes into the deep white soup again. I came across a man who'd strung himself up on his boat about 5 or 6 miles offshore about 4 or 5 years ago. The eerie and truly creepy part was realizing what it was. We just saw a boat out in the middle of the ocean's nowhere without anything other than blue horizon in sight at the break of dawn, and there was fairly thick fog as it had rained the night before. Realizing that the figure hanging from the boom was a man was one of the most haunting things I'll ever see. My uncle was last at sea while sailing. He went missing near the Marquesas, and there was a big search and lots of people involved and emails going to all family with updates. They found his boat sunk, missing the raft. My cousin told me that he thinks his dad ended things and sunk his boat beforehand on purpose. He would have enjoyed this one last mystery. So the point of this story is that sometimes I think people like to get as far from people as possible before they off themselves. When diving, a huge seine net drifting towards you. It wasn't anchored or anything, just a huge whirling cloud of death full of barnacles and dolphin skeletons and decomposing fish. Well, that would haunt my nightmares for more than a while. God forbid you get caught in that. If you get caught, no amount of therapy would get me back in the ocean if I survived that incident. This huge turtle as big as a Volkswagen Beetle. It went right under our boat. That thing was crazy. I have family who sailed around the world. One day in the North Atlantic, their sailboat was going over some gigantic swells. They didn't have brakes at the top, so it was safe, but the boat was rising and falling way beyond the natural. At the bottom of a trough, my uncle looked up to see the sun behind a wave and the silhouette of a whale inside, above him. Something about the immensity of whales and the ocean itself is very overwhelming and frightening. That image is horrifying to me, but I'd love to see it anyway. That kind of thing could be terrifying and humbling at the same time. Once I was scuba diving in Hawaii in not super deep water, like 60 to 70 feet at the bottom. We were down on the bottom checking out some eels and octopodes when everything got a lot darker. I looked up and there was a family of 3 humpback whales above us, a big one looking down at us, and the second one with a baby farther back. I'll never forget the look the big one gave us as it drifted overhead. Just kind of turned towards me from maybe 30 to 40 feet away and stared at me with its huge eye. Awesomely terrifying. We were once ported out of Bahrain and we woke up to this god-awful smell. We tossed on our coveralls and headed for the weather deck to find a huge cargo ship on the next dock stacked 5 stories high with cages of live lambs. Losing your ship's service generator in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean late at night. Most of the electrical service to the ship is lost until the emergency diesel generator hopefully starts up. When you're used to all of the vibrations and sounds in your living spaces, silence is deafening. It was a foggy night off the shore of Long Island and I was on a 75-foot schooner. The fog was so thick that you couldn't see more than 10 feet in front of you. The captain tells me there's no point in continuing my watch at the bow of the ship, and he and I start talking at the stern. About that time, there's a thunk on the side of the ship. We both turn to see a figure dressed in black, flowing robes walking towards us on the outside of the ship. The robes were scratching down the outside of the ship. It keeps coming closer and is high enough in the air that the top was about even with our heads. Turns out it was just a huge black flag to mark a lobster pot, but those first few seconds, it was terrifying. I once thought I saw a small landmass on the horizon. Upon closer inspection, it turned out to be a dead whale, belly up, with seagulls standing on it, pecking away at its flesh. My father, back in his commercial fishing days, noticed that there was a t-shirt in the middle of his net after one tow. After a little investigation, he found out that it wasn't just a shirt, but a human torso wearing a shirt. He said he was terrified that he'd open the net and a head would roll onto his feet, but luckily that didn't happen. His captain radioed ahead and they brought the torso back to the docks, where they were met by the police and a coroner. They were eventually able to identify the body, based on the clothing, as a victim of a plane crash that had occurred fairly recently. My dad said he offered a free lobster to the coroner, who graciously accepted it until he found out that it had been in the net with the body. After that, he got angry and told him to throw it back. That's understandable. That lobster probably had been eating the torso. Fishing out near the Great Barrier Reef, and my brother, who gets seasick, decides to go for a swim to settle his stomach, and less than a minute after getting back into the boat, a 17-foot great white went under the boat. I've been told that unassisted swimmers don't resemble the great white's prey. On the other hand, I've also been told that Santa Claus is real. While it's true that you're not like a great white's natural prey, sharks still tend to bite stuff that they're curious about. Tiger sharks, for example, you want to stay well clear of because those things will take a bite out of anything. Not a sailor, but I was on a fishing charter boat on Lake Erie. It was around 5 a.m. in the morning, and the water was scary calm and glass-like, and it was so foggy you couldn't see more than 30 feet, if that. We all started hearing this plopping sound, like somebody was slapping the water with open hands. It kept getting louder and closer, and at this point we'd all slowly moved to the other side of the boat, not knowing what the frick it was. Even the boat captain was standing there in total silence, as we all just stood there and listened to this plopping sound getting closer and closer. And to the shock of us all, a deer swam by the boat. Yeah, a deer. It looked to be a very large buck with at least 10 points on his rack. We were more than 10 miles offshore, so it made no sense at all. Can you say freaky? The stars. When you're 3 days from the nearest land and it's a clear night, there are more stars than you could ever imagine, and enough shooting stars to make you run out of wishes. It's also pretty cool being stuck in the Panama Canal with a Los Angeles-class submarine when they had to shut down the locks. Before we knew what was going on, there were helicopters everywhere dropping off Marines to set up around the lock. Toilets on boats are usually plumbed with seawater because it makes no sense to crap in your limited drinking water. One night I was taking the watch on a long-haul sail up the US East Coast. We were rounding the Florida Keys about to point towards Maine. I had to use the head, so I went below and pumped some water into the bowl. It was glowing in the dark. That freaked me out so much. Turns out there's photoluminescent phytoplankton in the water, which will glow if pumped into a dark toilet bowl. It's no longer scary, actually pretty neat. I mean, that just makes it even more important to use the toilet brush, don't you think? Those glowing little tattletales will highlight your marks of shame for all to see. I do feel a bit bad that they suffer a slow, crappy death in your septic tank, though. Well, I'm no sailor, but I am in the military. On September 11th, 2013, I was on a ship in the Red Sea. We were having a ceremony in remembrance of September 11th, when up floats a dead body right next to the ship. We were all locked down pretty quickly so that they could send out a couple of small boats to retrieve it. Never did hear anything more about that. Pretty damn weird if you ask me, though. Australian naval supply ship on the Great Southern Ocean, next to another naval ship. The swell was so great, the top of one ship's mast was deck level to the supply ship. Another one, told by a different mate. They were fishing off the shelf, off New South Wales. The boat was big enough to hold 6 blokes. A shark longer than their boat swam past. They packed up and went home. Some things are too big and have too many teeth to fish near. Not the sea, but on Lake Michigan, we saw a huge float of blow-up dolls all tied together, just floating there. There were probably about 15 of them just tied together, floating. Was frickin' strange, to say the least. I was working on a car carrier 4 years ago in the Middle East. Our typical route went through pirate waters at times, so we always picked up 4 ex-Marines as security in Aqaba, Jordan, before we went. One night while we were going through pirate waters off of Yemen, we started to have problems with the main engine. We stopped and had to drift off for a bit to figure out what the problem was. During this time, I was working on the stern, the back end of the vessel. I couldn't really see anything out in the ocean. Everything was dimly lit on the ship. I don't know why, but I got bored and I turned the spotlight on, and there he was, the This guy with a gun in a rusted little boat staring at me about 15 feet from the ship. I just stared back at him, kinda stunned. I was afraid if I reached for the radio to call one of the Marines, he'd shoot. The Marines had weapons. So he looked at me and I looked at him, and he sort of gave me a nod as if he was telling me, "Huh, well played," and I gave him one back. Then he slowly rowed his boat back off into the deep, pitch-black night. I still don't know how many others there were, but I did call it in on the radio station as soon as I lost sight of him. I still remember his face today, that deep, stern, concentrated look. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to Am I the Genius? Hurricane Katrina. We followed it down to provide aid for what everyone knew was going to be a disaster. It was as if the world had split in two. Above us was this beautiful sky with a few clouds strewn about, and then, not far ahead, there was this ghastly monster that had engulfed up the rest of the sky. It was green and purple and black. The clouds twisted in a way I'd never seen before, and the seas were very deceptive. If you looked right at the water, you were sailing on the swells that didn't look that intense, but I saw frigates and destroyers swallowed bow first and shot through the other side. I was lucky my ship was quite large. Even we were getting pelted on the O5 level of a supply ship, and you could forget ever walking in a straight line. Most of the time you'd be walking on a deck one moment and then the bulkhead wall the next. I've been in rough seas before on both smaller and larger platforms, but Hurricane Katrina took the cake. That thing was just an event, one that I'm glad I was following and not intercepting. My ship had just passed Cook's Passage when the wind and swell drastically increased. From the bridge wings you could touch the top of the swell, and the deck was flooded constantly. The scariest part was when we found our holds were taking in water. I was in the Navy standing watch in Operations Center. We were off the coast of San Diego. It was a very calm, clear night. Very smooth water. It was just me and a buddy on watch. I stepped out on the port side of the bridge under the bright moonlight. As my eyes adjusted, I start to see a circle form in the water and just grow and grow, making a perfect circle. I then noticed another, and another. My mind tripped and I couldn't figure out what was causing these massive circles forming near our ship. I went in and grabbed my buddy. We went back and the circles were still forming. Being a big ship, we were pretty high off the water, and as we watched, I realized what was happening. Porpoises were chasing schools of fish up to the surface of the water. And as the fish hit the surface, they started spreading out in perfect circles and would see the porpoises break the surface in the middle and dive back down. It was an amazing sight at night. I seriously thought I was seeing some kind of alien activity in the water for a moment there. The ocean at night is a beautiful and scary thing. Everyone should experience it at least once in their life. My uncle runs a charter fishing boat. He loves telling the story about how he was put out in the ocean on his boat at night, and there was this beautiful woman floating in a raft unconscious. He and my cousin pulled her aboard, and she began to regain consciousness, and she was really drunk. Apparently, she ended up being on a party boat earlier, and everyone just thought she was being too annoying. So to get rid of her, they just put her on a raft and sent her off. Lived on a sailboat in Malaysia for a while. The monstrous jellyfish that would come floating by silently out of nowhere scared the absolute crap out of me. Easily 1/2 meter in diameter, and hundreds of them. Worst creatures ever. I don't know, they're pretty if they're the glowy nighttime ones. Maybe that's not what you're talking about though. Surely they aren't a problem unless you go swimming, and the solution seems to be just don't? Finally, somewhere I can tell this story, quite possibly the strangest thing I've ever seen in my life. It was about 2 a.m. in the middle of the Atlantic and very dark with no moon. As I was walking up to the bow of our sailboat to inspect the sails, I saw a faint glow in the water a long way off. I stared at it for a long time before I realized there were actually 2 glowing objects moving quickly underwater, on a collision course with our boat. I immediately thought it was some submarine or torpedo about to ram us. But then the glowing shapes came right alongside the boat, perhaps a foot underwater. They were 2 ghostly blue dolphins, glowing brightly and so vivid and so close in the water. I immediately realized the dolphins were being illuminated by bioluminescent plankton, but the sight was surreal. I watched them play in our bow wave for a while, imagining sailors of the past witnessing these eerie dolphin spirits and how mind-blowing that must have been. I was sailing a small sunfish around an island near Florida in shallow water. As I cruised along, suddenly a large section of water directly in front of my bow exploded with a large splash. Immediately afterwards, my boat rammed into something under the surface and came to a complete stop. My first thought was, I've hit a reef. but suddenly the entire boat was lifted up and spun around 90 degrees, almost dumping me into the water. There was another big splash and I saw something zoom away, leaving a wake behind it. I was left freaking out and shaking. I thought to myself, I must have hit a big dolphin. Maybe it was a manatee. Lots of dolphins around here. So I finished my sail and went home. When I got to the beach, I pulled up the centerboard and found a real surprise. A 2-inch chunk had been bitten out of the wood. You could clearly see the marks of 3 large teeth. I'm very happy I didn't fall out of the boat that day. When I was 19, I'd just gone to sea for the first time with the US Navy. A few days after heading to the Gulf of Mexico for a few weeks of substance ops, we were dispatched to the Straits of Florida because Fidel Castro had opened the doors, and people were fleeing Cuba in droves. It was called Operation Able Vigil. One night, after standing watch all day over dozens of people who had been pulled out of the water, I was standing on the O3 level of the ship with a chief, smoking a cigarette. It was the only exterior surface of the ship not covered with refugees. It was a full bright moon that you could see reflecting on the ocean's surface, and we were talking about how crazy this all was and looking at all of the other Navy and Coast Guard ships on the horizon doing slow circles looking for people like we were. Suddenly, in the reflection of the moon, we saw something pass through the reflection. He looked at me and I nodded that yes, I'd seen something as well. He took off like a shot to the bridge, and the ship started to circle back towards the thing we'd seen. It was a person in a life preserver just floating in the middle of the Straits of Florida, hoping someone would see him. There we were on this $2 billion missile-loaded warship doing slow circles, looking for people in the water. All told, my ship saved or transported about 1,800 people back to Gitmo for processing. Keep in mind, ship's crew was only about 400 people. It left a big impression on 19-year-old me. I was in Angola surveying a 5-meter-wide corridor in preparation for the installation of a pipeline. We stumbled upon this foot-long cylindrical item. Lots of head-scratching, and later the client requests that it be relocated out of the corridor. The ROV moves in and inspects the item closer. Tin can? Compressed air bottle? Ordnance? ROV carefully picks the item up with its manipulator and then splat. It's only a huge bloody chunk of salami about 1,400 meters beneath the ocean's surface. Wasn't expecting that. Other finds include a twin-drum washing machine and a toilet seat. Going through the Suez Canal at night from Egypt, our ship was third in the convoy. You could see the ship in front of us fade into the darkness, but still able to see the lights. Then they vanished, like they were turned off. The lights in the sides of the canal vanished as well. After some time passed, we could see what the frick had happened. We'd sailed right into a wall of fog so thick that I could barely see my hands at the end of my arms. And when I say a wall, I mean it. There was no gradual build. It wasn't scary, but it felt otherworldly. I felt like on the other end of that fog it would be another time, like 1948 or something. I'm 69 years old now. When I was a kid, the retired couple next door babysat me. When the husband was a young man, he was a telegrapher at sea. Their ship was in the North Atlantic and he was on duty April 15th, 1912. He heard the distress call from the Titanic. Wish I'd interviewed him on tape. It's amazing how close some of these great events that we've only seen on film are to us. Even though we're just about losing our last few World War II veterans, the fact that so many of us knew people from these great storied landmarks of the 20th century who themselves grew up on stories of the 18th, continuing back on through history, is just sort of humbling to me every time I think about it. While traveling between Key West, Florida and Norfolk, Virginia, roughly near Miami, our lookout called away a ship at 090. We got on our radar, which has a range of 80 miles, and there wasn't a thing on it. A few of us went up to the crow's nest and used the mounted binoculars to look out, and there was a World War II-style battleship that could be seen hazily on the horizon. No evidence of it whatsoever would present itself on the radar. Pretty creepy. Not a sailor, but I do fish in the Gulf quite often. A few years ago, I was down in the Thousand Islands area, Southwest Florida, doing some backwater fishing with a buddy, and we hear that of a helicopter off in the distance. So we look up and watch a Coast Guard chopper trying to catch up to a speedboat. The chopper flies ahead, rotates so that its side is facing the front of the boat, and just opens up on the engines of the boat with an automatic weapon. The boat explodes into fire, I'm guessing it's hit a fuel tank, and the chopper starts hovering in a circle of sorts looking for survivors. At this point, my friend and I are like, yeah, we should just get the F out of here. A little later on, we did see what looked like a smaller Coast Guard ship heading out at that point. I'm guessing it was some sort of substance smuggling operation out of Cuba. Made for an interesting Saturday afternoon. The Space Shuttle Challenger exploding directly overhead as we sailed from Puerto Rico to Charleston. out to sea on a small fishing boat, 50 feet I think. One night after we set the gear, my brother and I chucked a shark hook in to see what was out there. Went inside, chucked on the telly, and having a cone when we felt the boat move unnaturally. Checked the hook and we had a good-sized mako shark, about 14 feet on it. Now, being a shark lover, I really wanted this thing to go free, so we tried to get it up onto the gantry to let the slack off so we could unclip it. As we were lifting it, it was getting lighter instead of heavier and the shark was absolutely flipping out. By the time we got it above water, from its pectoral fins down, it was just gone apart from bits of cartilage. And then we saw them. I don't know how many, but my best guess would be what we call a metric crap ton of huge squid. If one of us had fallen in wrestling this monster mako, it would have been all over. This memory really sticks out to me for some reason. One real creepy sound you hear sometimes, and there are a few out there, is whales. On a small fishing boat, your bed is below waterline. You can hear whales yabbering on. It isn't quite as relaxing as the whale song CD. Freakiest was when we had to run for shelter behind a rock. It was a well-known safe rock, and if any of you have seen Deadliest Catch, they use them occasionally. Just a big rock that protects you from wind and waves. We made it. The boat 3 or 4 miles behind us didn't. They all died. When admiration turns dark. This is how I knew they were way too into me. I called one of my co-workers out for being a little too handsy and creepy at work when I'd expressed my lack of interest repeatedly. As an apology, he got me a gift card to Victoria's Secret. This guy at college would follow me everywhere. One day I just went out to buy lunch and he came with me. He didn't buy anything, he just followed me. Even when I told him he was making me uncomfortable, he still wouldn't leave me alone. I didn't want to sound rude though. Eventually, he started trying to get on the bus with me when I'd head home. That was the last straw for me. The next time he tried to follow me onto the bus and actually managed to step on, I pushed him off and urgently told the driver to close the doors. The driver actually took the hint and shut them. I told him the guy was stalking me, showed my student ID, which allowed me on the bus for free, and took a seat. The next day, the guy had the audacity to ask me why I didn't let him come home with me, and I told him to stop following me around from then on. What teased me off about this is how we're conditioned that it's such a heinous thing to be rude. We should be teaching our kids that we want them to be rude if someone makes them uncomfortable, within reason, of course. When she started sending undressed photos to my work email because I asked her to stop contacting me. I changed my Snapchat account and blocked her number, but my work email is on my company's website, so she found it. That was an awkward conversation with my IT guys. Let me preface this with, I've never been a big social media user. It's too personal and too intrusive. I was bartending at a local hole-in-the-wall, and I had a regular that was nice and flirty. Kind of typical bartender and customer stuff. Hey, you were at John's house on Sunday morning. Are you guys a thing? I asked him how he knew that I was there, and he said he saw my car. I was a little taken aback, but I was parked on the main road and my car was fairly distinctive, so I didn't think too much of it. A couple of weeks later, he made a joke that I was never home because my car was always gone when he passed by. That made the hair on my neck stand up, but again, I don't exactly live off of the beaten path, so okay. When I really knew that it was more than casual observations was when he started complimenting me on different outfits and hairstyles that I wore on my days off or prior to my shift. He'd also make comments about me receiving packages or what I came home with after shopping. You should find someone to carry those groceries into the house for you. I'd never make you carry the bags in the house after all that shopping you did on Saturday. It was really creepy and I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched for a long time. Oh boy, I mean, not stalking people at all is the way to go, but if you are a stalker, why would you think that outing yourself as such was a good idea? That's just a whole new level of clueless and creepy. Yikes. When I was stationed in Korea, and my ex-girlfriend kept mailing my wife from different emails pretending to be women in Korea that I was cheating on her with. My wife and I had a pretty good laugh about it, and she eventually came clean. Her husband was not happy about her still obsessing over me. I almost forgot to add that my wife was never worried about the emails. In her words, "You're too much of a socially awkward nerd to get another woman to sleep with you." She said to me, "I stopped taking my birth control when you came to visit." That's when you say, "Oh, I just remembered I left my phone in the car. Be right back." When my dad showed up to my place of work, we had been estranged, but he knew that I worked at Starbucks and had traveled from location to location to figure out where I'd transferred to and when my shifts were scheduled. He even had the stones to call the store and pretend to be me to get my schedule information. I saw his vehicle parked out front and freaked out and ran inside. He followed in after about 30 minutes, right as the morning rush was hitting full swing, and started berating me in front of all of my coworkers and customers. That's the day I went and learned about restraining orders. My husband was deployed in Afghanistan, so I had to go to church alone. One week, an older man, maybe 65, approached and said, "Oh, can I sit here?" And I said, "Sure." We had a bit of a conversation, and he said, "My wife died a few weeks ago, and I was just praying this morning for God to send an angel that I could sit with at church today." He seemed like a sweetheart, and I felt bad for him. He sat next to me for the next few weeks in a row. It didn't bother me too much. I bought him some homemade jam, and he told me about how his son was also deployed. I mentioned that he should really try getting into a church small group, that it would be great company for him. I set him up with one of the best. He said he wasn't sure how to get to the venue. If he gave me his number, could I tell him where the place was? He seemed confused, so I said, sure. Well, once I texted him the directions, I don't think he ever went to that group, but he had my phone number. He started calling like 8 times a day saying, "Hello, beautiful," and begging me to meet him at Waffle House. For the remainder of my husband's 6-month deployment, I couldn't go to church. I was really worried about running into that guy. I blocked his number, and luckily I've never seen him again. Months after my husband got back, I told him what happened, and of course he was livid. I broke up with a really controlling boyfriend after he physically attacked me, and at the time I worked about a 25-minute drive from where I lived. Always drove the same road home. My schedule never changed, and then I began seeing his car and occasionally his friends' cars along my drive, always parked off from the road a little and around some seriously sharp corners. At first I didn't think anything of it until it began happening at night. I'd do inventory every Tuesday night and be at work until 10 p.m. This was my only full night shift. This went on for about a month until I started switching my routes to and from work because I was getting creeped out. Easter ended up rolling around and I, again, had to stay late to help my coworker change the signage. I worked at Subway, by the way. It was getting close to 9 p.m. and the work phone began ringing off the hook. It was my ex. My coworker, who knew what was going on, just muted the phone and we continued doing what we needed to do. Shortly after, we saw my ex standing outside in the middle of the road, staring into the restaurant. I hid behind the counter as soon as I could, and my coworker ended up telling me when he left. Got calmed down until we got to my car to find out he'd broken in and left a bunch of green herb and a threatening note. I bought a new car the next week, fully equipped with a very loud alarm. As a bus driver, you're expected to be cheerful and chat with whoever while idle. A regular passenger started riding around, always in the front seat. Over a week or two, the conversation got quite personal and always by her initiative. I told my supervisor about this just to cover my butt. Then she started bringing me gifts, cookies, and candy and beverages. Finally, she invited me over for a meal so her mum could meet her boyfriend. I had zero interest in this young woman, and I didn't want to do anything with her. Luckily, she moved or just avoided the bus during my shift after I said no. When he started acting like he couldn't survive without me directly by his side at all times. I'd met him a week earlier, only spoke to him briefly, and never flirted or had any romantic or bedroom interactions with him. He literally just stalked me and physically put himself at my side like a Siamese twin, going as far as pushing other people away from his spot and threatening to end himself when I brought it up with him. "Yeah, I'm good, thanks." Well, this sounds familiar. This guy confessed his love for me within 2 days of me knowing him, and said he can't wait to make crazy, beautiful, passionate love with me. He hated all my friends and accused me of leading him on after I noped out of there. He showed up to places I went to a few times and afterwards, and just watched me the whole time. I haven't seen him in years though, thank God. My sister brought home what she thought was my spiral notebook from school. She thought it was mine because it had my name written and doodled covering every page. Turns out it was a girl who was obsessed with me. Okay, my sister is obsessed with her ex. She cheated on him and is desperate to get him back. She constantly tries to get in touch with him, like getting my little brother to FaceTime him through his iPad, because she knows he won't answer her. She says she thinks about him every day and will text him on holidays like Easter just to say have a nice day or whatever. They had a conversation, and after that she looked up the program he was in at the college he goes to and found out that his program was cancelled because of COVID-19, so she doesn't understand why he hasn't gotten in contact with her. She wrote a letter a few days ago and is planning to go to his house and leave it at his door. Originally, her plan was to pay me to go and ring the doorbell and give it to him, but like hell no. Whenever I tell her to back off, she just says I don't understand because I've never been in a relationship. It's been months of this crap. It was really sad. It was a high school student who I was teaching. She found out where I lived and used to be conveniently in the area, and then just started parking in front of my house. I had to report her. We all met with the principal and a counselor. She was a senior, so we all agreed that if she stopped doing this and took another class that I wasn't teaching, we'd let her graduate at the school. Hey, you know what? Good on you for nipping it in the bud then. That might be the best case scenario we find in these stories. One that resolved with understanding that this wouldn't go on and not destroying the obsessed party's life in the meantime. I had 2 instances when I was younger. One was the first boyfriend I ever had. 8th grade summer going into my first year of high school. We broke up after homecoming because of some very stupid young person drama, and he went absolutely nuts after that. Constant texts and phone calls, getting his friends to talk to me and hound me, you know, the typical stuff. It culminated in him carving my name into his arm. He died of a smack overdose in like 2016. The second time was more of a slow burn. This was back in the day when AIM and MSN was the thing you did. This guy I kind of knew from high school added me on AIM. He was a senior, actually a super senior, which I guess makes it even worse. This was while I was a freshman, and he'd been dating a fellow freshman classmate of mine for a while. We had similar music tastes and talked about the band Brand New a lot. We talked for a long time actually, just platonically. Or so I thought. Instant messaging was kind of the thing back in the day, and I talked to a lot of people. I didn't have any cause for concern with him. He was somebody that used to go to my high school, and we liked the same band. When the album The Devil and God Are Raging Inside of Me by Brand New came out, they went on tour and finally came to Seattle, and he was like, "Dude, let's go. I'll get you a ticket." I was like, "You don't have to pay for me, I'll pay for my own." But he insisted, so I was like, whatever. I buy my friends stuff all of the time. That's fine. Keep in mind that he and that girl were long past broken up, and also keep in mind he was about 21 or 22 at this point, and I'd just turned 16. He also insists on driving. I was like, score, I'm saving on gas. The whole time he's kind of touching me a lot and acting really excited and whatever, and I'm just getting a vibe. Sorry if that's vague, but it was just a vague vibe. The concert was fine, kind of uneventful and kind of a letdown, because the band really acted like that was the last place on earth they wanted to be, and he just would not stop. Trying to hold my hand, grab my hips, just way too handsy. And then I realized I had to drive home with him from frickin' Seattle, which was like 30 minutes plus away. The car ride home, he was talking a lot and really excited and whatever, and it all kind of came out how he felt about me. Once again, he's in his early 20s and I'm, well, younger. I'm trapped in the car with him. When he drops me off, he makes his move and I reject it and tell him thank you for everything, but I don't feel that way. And he gets furious. He blew me up on AIM, typical nice guy trademarked crap about how he bought my ticket and drove to Seattle, and all the years, like 2, that we'd been talking, and me supposedly leading him on all this time, and apparently him and his ex actually used to fight about me because I guess he was obsessed with me even back then. It was so creepy. I was sad because I felt like I did something wrong, and because I felt like I lost what I thought was a friend. I have no idea where he is or what he's doing now. I'm about to turn 30, so all of this is a long time ago, and I've had other creepy experiences in my life, but I think those early ones really formed a big impression. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to Am I the Genius? I'd just gotten out of a 10-year relationship that had turned sour, and I was pretty protective of my personal time and space. One of the guys in my larger friends group wanted to date me. I told him we could hang out from time to time, but I wasn't looking for a relationship, and specifically I wasn't looking for a relationship with him. We got along okay, but I didn't love him, and I told him that. Pretty soon he was dominating all of my time. If I went out with my girlfriends, he'd be there. If I went to shows or galleries or carnivals or other family events, there he was. He turned up on my doorstep constantly, and if I faked not being home, he'd leave notes and gifts on my car. Eventually, I had to tell him we weren't in a relationship, marriage wasn't in the cards, and he could stop thinking up baby names. I started having to sneak around just to see my friends. At some point, he had to move back home out of state to take care of a family issue, and I got blessed peace from him. He was gone for about 8 months, during which I insisted on very limited phone contact. When he got back, he found out that I'd traveled with a male coworker on a business trip, and he flipped all the way out. The email was 4 nasty pages long, accusing me of being a gold digger, a working girl, a tease, and that I'd led him on. That he had been about to marry me and I'd destroyed his whole life. That I'd ruined everything. I figured the only way out of this for me was to be an absolute, total, horrible C-word to him, which I was in spades, making sure that he knew that I'd destroy with fire everything he'd ever loved if he even tried to make contact with me again. I had a girl that would visit me and purposefully forget something at my house as an excuse to drop back by unannounced. Oh, I was just in the area and I decided to stop by to get my hair scrunchie that I left here by mistake. Hope you're not busy. After the third time it happened, I realized she had mental problems or memory problems. Either way, I wanted no part of it. I had a female friend at college. She was really obsessive and acted like she owned me. I got a boyfriend. She hated him and he called her out at a party for it. He turned to walk away and she tried to bottle him. She then screamed at me for not backing her up and that I should have put her first. What the frick? Oh wow. So they were genuinely like, why wouldn't you help me commit battery with a deadly weapon on your unarmed partner? Sisters before misters, you're such a bad friend. Wow, she is just such an anthropomorphic red flag. I had a friend. She was a bit eccentric. We were really close until she started going totally off the edge. She hid my bicycle, stood outside my house, screaming obscenities. She told everyone we were doing it, belittled my past traumas, and just screamed right in my face. She tried to shank our common friend. Twice. The thing that pulled alarms in my head was when I told her I'd be heading home from my boyfriend's soon, but that maybe she could come by to visit in a couple of hours if she wanted. I got home in under an hour, and she was waiting near my apartment building and started accusing me of lying to her. There was absolutely no telling her that I wanted to settle a bit, take a shower, and eat something. I hadn't strictly told her that I was home in exactly 2 hours. I managed to cut her out of my life. A few years later, she started blowing up my mother's phone. One can't find my number anywhere. She was demanding my mother give her my number, explaining all of this petty lunatic nonsense about how she needed me because I'm one of her apostles and she needs me to start her own religion because she is, quote, his son, another of Adam and Eve. And that is not even the craziest thing she said. It's even stranger seeing that a few years before she was super paranoid about my mother since my mother works for the military. And yes, previously this girl had a delusion that she was the reincarnated Jesus. After this, I've heard through friends that I'm Peter, Venus, and latest probably was that I was a working girl. So yeah, that was the point. I was more than sure she was obsessed with me. I had I guess you'd call her a friend, that I used to talk to about her crushes and stuff. This was our constant conversation topic, but I didn't mind at first. It was when she started getting kinda creepy that I started backing away. She'd tell me about how she absolutely loved this boy. He was so perfect and so cute. She'd go on and on and on. And then one day, she'd message me super distraught because the guy rejected her confession. When I asked her about it, she explained that she never actually spoke to him before. The guy had never had any idea who she was. He'd tried to let her down easy, super cordially, but she was just destroyed. Acted like she got dumped out of her long-term relationship. But then, after all of this, she'd just move on to the next guy like it was nothing. She'd like a new guy every month or so and rinse-repeat the same process. Even when I'd advise her to take time to just get to know someone before going too nuts, sometimes she'd have 3 guys she liked all at the same time. Oh, and also she used to get me to draw her with these guys. I can remember feeling strange about it, like was I feeling some kind of delusion? So I stopped eventually. Really tiring after so long, so I just kind of drifted away. In short, an old friend used to confess her intense love to poor guys who had no idea who she was. Not because they ignored her, just because they were never even introduced. I used to work with a guy who I knew had a little crush on me. First of all, it was just a little crush, with him just making an effort to talk to me whenever I saw him. Soon, it progressed to personal messages. I finally realized it was on an unhealthy level when he asked if I was heading to cadets that night. I used to be involved heavily before moving to a city where I had that job. I'm pretty quiet on social media, so the only way he could have found out is a deep internet search for some local news articles, which only mentioned my very common last name. They weren't quite obsessed with me, but it involved me with the police. This guy I worked with years ago came in on his day off and was nervously being friendlier than usual. Eventually he said something like, "Hey, you remember a few weeks ago, on a specific date on the calendar, when you saw me here at the pool hall and we talked about this and that?" I have a pretty good memory and I said, "No, that was on a Saturday," not whatever day he suggested. He mumbled some curse word and then left. Not even an hour later, 2 detectives came in and asked whether I could alibi him on the date that he had suggested. I said no and asked what it was about. They said they couldn't talk about the ongoing investigation. The next day, he was arrested for kidnapping his girlfriend and essentially taking her prisoner and subjecting her to some pretty dark stuff. She had broken up with him and he had just snapped. That guy went away for a bunch of years. I hope that she's doing okay now. Oh, he still messages me 4 years later. My number's changed twice since, but I still get emails. We've never dated, I've never expressed attraction, I've turned him down 4 or 5 times. After he didn't get the hint, I figured that I needed to ghost him. 4 freaking years of this. This crazy girl sent a long email to my therapist saying that he wasn't doing a good job. When I worked at a grocery store, we had a group of friends that always hung out, including this one guy that was kind of awkward and clung to us like glue. For some reason, my friends tried to hook us up, even if I said I wasn't interested. The guy couldn't take a hint and always tried to join in on my conversations with other people. After a few weeks of this going on and me saying no, I announced that I was heading to college. One of my friends later told me that he said he found a job close to my college so that he could come visit me more often. That was the last straw. I just told him enough was enough, and I blocked him on all social medias, saying I wanted no contact from him. If he was at a party, I wouldn't go, and vice versa. That was the last I saw of him. She went to my grandmother's house and got my phone number from besides the phone on the little board in the kitchen, 5 years after we'd dated and after I'd severed all ties with her and anybody that was still associated with her. This girl that was in my friend group, that I didn't really even like as a friend, had this massive crush on me. We'll call her Bree. It was pretty obvious that she had no clue how to act around guys, let alone guys that she liked. For some reason, I'd always be interested in girls that somebody in the group knew, and that would always make its way to Bree, and she'd ask lots of questions about this girl constantly. After about a week, the girl that I was interested in would inevitably stop talking to me, and I'd move on to a new girl a couple of weeks later. I didn't know why at the time, but the girls I was interested in would stop talking to me out of nowhere, even when I thought things were going well. So it turns out that Bree would find these girls on social media and DM them, telling them that we have a thing or that she wants me and tells them to back off. Finally, this one girl told me that she did this, and I confronted Bree about it, and she confessed her love to me and begged me to go out with her. That crap did not fly, and she got kicked out of the friend group. In short, Psycho Witch scared off the girls I talked to because she thought she loved me. Anthony Bourdain once said, "There's a guy in my head, and all he wants to do is lay in bed all day long, smoke Mary J, and watch old movies and cartoons. My life is a series of stratagems to avoid and outwit that guy." So who's that guy for you, and what do you do to avoid him? Oh, I hate mornings. I don't like waking up. I don't like breakfast as a genre or activity. I don't see a good reason to be anywhere before 10 a.m. I've started forcing myself to wake up early and go to the gym before work. And I hate it so much. But it makes me feel so gosh darn great all day long. It's a crappy, healthy dose of morning endorphins that stops me from getting sleepy after lunch, keeps me energized after work, and get a better night's sleep. It sucks so much, and it sucks even more that it improves every aspect of my day, because now if I stop, I know I'll just start having crappy bad days again and it'll be my own dumb fault with a simple fix. That inner slacker of mine wants to settle for anything out of fear of nothing better coming later. That guy's okay with the dead-end job, the horrible relationships and no master's degree. I tell that guy that it's never gotten him anywhere, it's the definition of stuck, and I have no intention of being stuck anymore. What's always helped me is, once I was told, "You're never stuck, you just don't like the consequences of making a difficult choice that might make you uncomfortable." It's true, you're never stuck. Maybe a choice will make you less comfortable now or temporarily, but you're never actually stuck. Oh, that guy is kicking my butt right now. You've got to fight back, man. He's a lazy dropout. He can't be that good of a fighter. The guy who wants to go streaking during the Super Bowl halftime show. I avoid him by remembering that prison is not a pleasant place to be. I used to eat cheap pizza, chain smoke, and play video games. I changed a lot of those habits to healthier ones. God damn, I miss smoking. More than 6 years smoke-free, and I still crave it as much as the day I quit. Same for me. It's just over 6 years, and I could go back to a pack a day tomorrow if I let my guard down. I had my last cigarette and never cheated once, as it would be back to a pack a day again instantly. The worst are the dreams where I'm smoking and I wake up in a panic. Yep, I definitely understand the feeling of missing your negative habits, even when you know you shouldn't get back to them. God, I miss rewatching series while smoking green herb and eating chips. That guy Anthony Bourdain talked about, his cousin lives in my head. I have to go to AA meetings to avoid and outwit him. I used to have a little sign on my desk that said, "The worst possible feeling is when the person you are meets the person you could have been." It was there to encourage me to pursue my goals rather than procrastinate on games or Reddit. I think it's time I dug out that sign again. Ouch, it's worse than that Ben Franklin quote. A man can die at 25 and not be buried until he's 75. Oh, bold of you to assume I avoid my inner slacker. My whole life is a series of stratagems to enable that guy to spend as much time in bed watching cartoons as he can without ending up homeless or unable to pay for green herb. We came to an agreement and take turns occupying the same body. It's me from 5:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. on weekdays, and he gets evenings, weekends, and holidays. I've got the same arrangement. My guy's left me with one heck of a hangover to deal with this morning. He just wants to win the lottery and sit on his couch watching dark comedies, drinking until it kills him. I avoid this by remembering that my mother would be very sad if that happened and that I want to love someone, like really be in love, at least one more time before I go. I have the same exact guy in my head. I quit smoking Mary J years ago, before I hit 30. I could still lay in bed all day on some days. What keeps me from doing it, as in having a 24-hour lay-in on my laptop, are the commitments I've made to myself, my friends, and employers. Back in the day, green herb made it really easy to give up on those commitments. I miss it, but I don't miss those times in general, which keeps me from going back. Precisely, you've said it very well. For me at least, getting blazed just made me very content with doing absolutely nothing. Which is fine sometimes, but I was blazed all the time and then doing nothing all the time. I was so bored and boring to myself that I had to quit smoking and other stuff completely. It's only been a few years. It feels like a work in progress, but I'm getting happier with who I am. I have chronic severe depression going 25 years now. It's not completely clear what I have, but it comes and goes. Not SAD, not bipolar, not MDD, we simply don't know and medication doesn't work. However, it's never really gone, it's more like it's either manageable or unmanageable. The voice is either telling me that I should lie down and just give up, or it's telling me that soon I'll be lying down and giving up again. My manageable moments are obviously filled with as much joy as I can pack in there, and every night before going to bed I tell the voice to suck it. Today was my day, not yours. When it's unmanageable and the voice tells me to give up, I try to fight him as long as I can, and when I start to agree with him, I always manage to end it with, "But not today." It's kept me alive this long. I hope that I can keep going like this for a while. I've always tended towards anxiety and panic attacks rather than depression, but I do understand what you describe here. The real me wants to make a huge buffet, host a fancy dress party for all my friends, and then write that drama I've got an idea for, but anxiety can just punch me in the stomach and pin me down and yell at me to stop it, to stop doing anything because I'm ugly, deformed, stupid, and unoriginal, and nobody will hang out with me anyway, and I have to hide under the duvet shaking until I can function again. That guy is my ADHD. I probably have an extreme case where my meds, which are at high doses, hardly even work anymore. The best way I combat this urge is to do something fun. Play games or goof off to remove myself from any place of temptation. Cut it off before you get the thought of even doing something pleasurable. What I do is that I find empty classrooms at my college and I study or do work in there. I will purposefully drive away from my home, which is full of games, food, fun, and comfort, to a classroom just so I don't get the urge. And even if I do, I've created a barrier that takes too much guilt and effort of driving back and doing something fun. This got me through college. I just went in the morning and never came home until my work was done, like late afternoon, early evening mostly. Being stuck on campus all day, even if I wasn't super productive, meant the work would get done because what else was there to do? Basically, the plan was to do nothing so much that any actual work was a welcome change of pace. At home, I can do nothing indefinitely without getting tired of it. And better yet, I didn't have to feel too bad about doing nothing at home because I never had any schoolwork to do there. The guy in my head wants to lay in my pillow-top bed with soft sheets, my Buffy blanket, memory foam pillows, and just sleep 18 hours a day and hide from everyone. Punctuated by gorging myself on good takeout food, getting raving drunk, and just watching endless history documentaries and plan travel trips for next year. If that's all I did, I'd also probably take up smoking green herb again as well. The girl in my head is constantly trying to get out of doing things. Everything, like going to work, going to school, and socializing and stuff. Anything besides sitting at home in my chair, smoking a J, and watching some coming-of-age drama or comedy. I have to force myself every day to do all the stuff that being an adult human requires of me. It's hard. I think almost everyone feels this way. I accept that my lazy demon exists, and I love her back to health. Oh, I let her out and feed her once in a while. That way she lets me get on with my life. Yeah, don't ever tame your demons, but always keep them on a leash. I figure that I may as well share about my guy. My guy hates me and what little bit of life I've built for myself. The guy in me just wants to lay in bed all day, every single day until I age out and die. Don't even get me started on the other thing the guy wants me to do. And yeah, it's pretty similar to Bourdain's in terms of its other cravings. To fight back, I try listening to music that fits my emotions in the moment. I try keeping my hands busy, and luckily, I enjoy cooking. Deck building or Magic the Gathering can also help. I try to be creative and draw more. I try to exercise. I go out and tell jokes at open mics. I try to do everything that my guy doesn't want me to do. I want to be better than the guy that my guy wants me to be. He does have a grip on me most days, but I try my hardest to get out of it. I just want to grill, for God's sake. Feed your demons. Feed them ribs. He's the voice that tells me to stop what I'm doing and end it all. To avoid him, I just ignore what he says. At the moment, he's wrong. Whew, we're running the full range of responses from the lazy guy all of us have inside to those facing substantially tougher inner adversaries. I'm sorry that your personal inner voice is so much scarier than the one that some of us slackers have to go through. I really hope that you keep thriving despite this guy. You deserve everything good. The guy in my head not letting me lay in bed all day smoking green herb and watching cartoons. Well, my guy wants to die. I'm unsure of how to avoid him. Copious amounts of caffeine seems to do all right. That guy for me is someone who's constantly grumpy, never wants to get out of his pajamas, and loves being drunk and on stuff. To avoid said guy, I make a conscious effort to stay productive, motivate myself, and never drink alone. Why try to outwit and avoid that guy? My goal in life is to find a way to sustain that lifestyle that guy suggests. The only reason I even do any of that other ambitious stuff is so that I can do all of the nothing that I want. Bill Watterson wasn't exactly saying what Bourdain's head guy was, but he had a good middle ground philosophy between complete slacker and crazy Steve Jobs as a CEO mentality. You should look him up. I tried doing push-ups. It gave me all the motivation I needed to get off my butt because I was so pathetic at them. If you think about it, if you can only do like one push-up, that's maximum effort. So that one push-up, or whatever exercise, is at its most efficient for gains. By thinking this way, doing the hardest thing is actually the most efficient and thus lazy and great for you. I mean, Anthony Bourdain's guy is my main personality. My guy wants to do something drastic to qualify for Social Security disability, and then, jobless, lounge around all day drinking beer, watching whatever, and roaming around GTA 5 as I eat the government cheese. You should remind that inner guy that disability is actually pretty hard to get. I've got 3 separate major diseases, one of which gives me several weekly seizures, and I was told no. I just had an appeal hearing last month, after waiting 2 years for it. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to Am I the Genius? The guy in my head is literally Mr. Spock from Star Trek, and I don't avoid him. Hear me out. I discovered through therapy that I needed a mechanism for judgmentless and objective self-analysis, and Mr. Spock was that guy. He can see the most messed up space stuff ever and react calmly and objectively. In the series, for example, it'll be like, the massive space blob has a 97.454% chance of consuming the ship and everybody inside within 4 to 7 minutes. Projections show it will be slow and painful. And Kirk will be like, that's horrible. Yes, it's not ideal for our continued survival, but its actions are entirely within the nature of the space blob. So, to go back to my life, whenever I get spun up on something in my head, I imagine a mini Spock in my head with a science terminal that can pull all data about me. I'll say, Spock, science report. Data shows that Ian is within 5.8 days from quitting smoking tobacco and is under great mental distress from the change of chemical intake. He isn't consciously aware of it, but he's attempting to make up an excuse to get gas on a half tank in order to create an opportunity to buy a packet of cigarettes. Okay, thanks Spock, sounds like I'm being dishonest with myself. God, I suck. I disagree. It's entirely within the nature of nicotine addicts to seek out sources of nicotine intake. This is neither good nor bad, it's just natural. Data also suggests that conscious awareness mitigates the chances of nicotine intake by 89.45%. You've yet to procure a nicotine source as well. Commendable, actually. Just going through that mental exercise will help knock me out of a mental spun-up state, help sort out emotions, feelings, all of that stuff into a past, objective, and most importantly, non-judgmental way. This mechanism has helped myself so much. However, I'd offer a couple of words of advice if you're intending to take on this method as well, because it can be a frustrating mechanism to employ if you don't have your expectations set correctly. I should mention that Spock's reports will be amended, appended, referenced, and reworked entirely. That's all part of the process. Even Spock had several times where extended analysis was needed to understand something in order to create a way to cope or overcome or what have you. Don't treat everything he says as a mutable truth. His analysis is only as good as the data he is able to receive through that mental science terminal. Your initial reports will upgrade that terminal for stronger analysis in the future. Second point, you will fail as well, and that's totally okay. He's analyzed far more than me just smoking. Everything from anxiety, struggles with work, and interpersonal relationships, they've all been reviewed through that science terminal. But sticking with the smoking report as an example, recognizing that getting gas was just an excuse to get cigarettes didn't come from a single analysis, but was referenced from a prior science report, as at one point I'd quit smoking, went to get gas a few days later, and drove away with a packet of cigarettes in my pocket. Spock reported, Ian formulated a reason to create an environment that allowed his weakened will to procure a source of nicotine. Further analysis shows that nicotine addiction is extremely subversive to Ian's psyche at a subconscious level. The strength of control the addiction exerts upon his mind is quite strong. Fascinating. Spock doesn't judge me. It all is what it is, and I respond, yeah, that is fascinating. My mind is stranger than I ever thought possible. However, I'm more in control because now I recognize this pattern of behavior. I believe that this can be identified at a later point if I do this again. Thank you, Spock. That failure to stop smoking at that time was an opportunity to learn about myself, and FYI, I'm several months smoke-free now and still going. Okay, that was a long one, but point number 3. This isn't to make someone an emotionless logic machine either. Spock understands human nature as an emotional experience. Humans get raunchy, sad, happy, angry, depressed, excited, all of that stuff that comprises the human condition. It's all part of the logic of being human. Take that into account, yet strive to be aware of your humanity and make conscious decisions on what you do instead of subconsciously reacting emotionally. 4. Trust your intuition. Your instincts have been developed over millions of years of evolution. Your mind is powerful and could subconsciously recognize threats and boons to your world and yourself. Even if you don't understand why your guts are reacting the way that they are, don't dismiss it. Run it by Spock, and if you don't come to a satisfactory answer, you can always revisit later when you've got more experience, time, and data. My guy wants to smoke fat J's and play guitar all day. It just so happens to be my job, and I'm trying to turn it into an originals career now with a new band. I got tired of fighting him, so I just embraced the jerk. I'm a microbiology major, pre-med and all, but sometimes I really just want to stay at home and be a cute little housewife. I want to have 3 kids and be a PTA mum. I love the idea, but I know I couldn't be truly happy with that. Wait. I'm supposed to avoid that guy? Whoops. Oof. The guy doesn't believe I'll ever be happy. He thinks I'll ruin every relationship I'm in and give up on every endeavor I do. My hobbies and family help me out. Mine tells me to end it, and even with all of the hurt that comes with it, that it's better to leave everything and everyone and just start over. He just wants a fresh start. Started selling all of my stuff to appease him. I joined the army. Now that guy doesn't have much of a choice. Well, that's one way to literally contractually oblige him to do something, I guess, but I wouldn't recommend it for everyone. A lot of people in the forces end up very isolated, situationally depressed, and spend all of their hard-earned money on things that they don't need to make them happy. You really need to have a goal or something to work towards outside of the army. My guy just wants to sleep all frickin' day. To give you the full Anthony Bourdain quote, look, I understand that inside me there's a greedy, gluttonous, lazy hippie, you know? I understand that free time is probably my enemy. That if I'm given too much free time to contemplate the mysteries of the universe, I'm afraid that inner hippie will emerge. There's a guy inside me who wants to lay in bed and smoke green herb all day and watch cartoons and old movies. I could easily do that. My whole life is a series of stratagems to avoid and outwit that guy. I make sure I commit to projects based on, will they be interesting? I like to keep my momentum going. I'm aware of my appetites, and I don't let them take charge. It goes back to my smack addiction. If smack, or delicious food, is the number 1 thing on the to-do list every day, there probably won't be a number 2 thing on your things to-do list, you know? I don't avoid him. I hate all of this climb the ladder, work constantly, self-improvement crap. It's just about making you feel bad about yourself in the hopes that you'll buy some crap that you don't need. As far as I can tell, all it does is make people desperately unhappy. They become perfectionists and they're never good enough for themselves. I work hard, I live a quiet life, and you can bet your butt I'll spend my free time relaxing and engaging in personally enjoyable activities. I don't owe this world my best self, because I'm fine as I am. I certainly don't need to buy any motivational material or other cliché crap to make myself feel better. I don't need a program. I don't need to pay a man to show me how to do incredibly basic gym moves, and I don't need any frickin' entrepreneurial seminars. Basically, F off and let me spend my gosh darn Sundays getting blazed and enjoying what little time I have on this earth.
That's right. I mean, look at animals, for instance. All they do is lay around and chill until they get hungry. We conditioned ourselves to be unhappy unless we do something. Like we're constantly trying to one-up ourselves, only to end up in the same place we were in before. It's this constant seeking for some imaginary goal and some imaginary future that never comes. It makes us anxious and unhappy. It's like running around in a circle.
My guy doesn't want to bother being alive. I avoid him by positive thinking, recognizing mental distortions, therapy, and increasingly exercising. That son of a bee gets nothing. All he wants to do is drink his life away. He's already had 10 years of my life. He doesn't get a second more. So the girl in my head is kind of a depression-riddled monster. She tells me I'm worthless, useless, and that I'll never amount to anything. I go to therapy once a week to learn ways to outsmart her and prove her wrong. I don't think it will ever stop, but I'm learning with ways to cope. Well, of course I know him. He's me. I've recently been dealing with a pretty tough breakup, one that I caused due to me not being mentally well. I decided to start going to therapy once a week, and I've been pushing myself out of bed every single morning to go for a 30-minute run before work, and after work I hit the gym. I'm just trying to be a better person for myself and actually be happy with my life for once. I know things don't come overnight, but with progress, I'll reach my goal eventually. If I have the will, multiple strategies work, including eating properly, exercising, meditation, talking to friends, talking to family, keeping clear priorities of what I want to do. But unfortunately, every now and then something trips everything up, and the will to outmaneuver the guy in my head just isn't there. That guy is all the more persuasive when you feel like a, to quote Kyle Kinane, stripped bare toothless cog spinning freely and ineffectually in the working machine of society. That girl does a lot of partying and is a free bird flying, but this woman's kids keep her grounded and at home. The guy in my head just wants to eat junk food, play video games, and crank his hog all day long. I only avoid him by going to work, but on my days off, it's a party. For me, that girl wants to be a stay-at-home mum who sells multi-level marketing and drinks a PSL with her jogging buddies, but I work, cook amazing meals, and hunt because I know I wouldn't be truly happy if I gave up the empowerment of making my own money and truly enjoying the things I want. Florida Man vs. Old Testament. Who did it first? Florida Man unalives his brother in a field, says he was jealous of what the Lord gave him. Says he tried burying the body multiple times, but the ground refuses to take his body and keeps unburying it. Florida Man, whose wife went missing, claims she turned into something that looked like bath salts. Florida Men try to build a tower to the heavens but abandon project due to poor communication skills. Left-handed Florida Man shanks overweight politician with sword. Sword disappears into politician's body, never to be seen again. And let's not forget the only reason that the guards didn't stop him before being ordered out of the room was because they'd already patted him down, but only for if he had wielded the blade with his right hand. They didn't touch his inner right thigh at all. Also, they thought the king was taking a massive dump and didn't check on him until later. Okay, which biblical story is this? It's not a commonly referenced one. It's the story of Judge Ehud. He went to deliver tribute money to King Eglon of Moab in order to save Israel. It was all a ploy so that Ehud could knife the evil king. He got the king alone and shanked him, but the king was so fat that the long dagger disappeared under his skin and fat, and Ehud just left it in there. He then escaped down a latrine. What makes this even funnier is that the king's servants thought he was just taking a really long time to go to the bathroom, so they didn't come up to check on him for a long time. Judges 3:12-29. Disoriented Florida Man found on the beach claims to have spent the last 3 days in the stomach of a large fish. Florida Man cuts his girlfriend into pieces after she is unspeakable acted to death and then mails them to every town in Florida. Florida Man caught with a bag containing 200 skins from the trouser snakes of men from his neighboring community. Reports indicate that this is the same individual who killed local heavyweight celebrity by flinging a pebble at his head several years ago as a teenager.
When you look at the energy involved in a well-handled sling, it's really more like shooting him in the face than flinging a pebble.
You know, I remember King David killing Goliath, but I'd wiped the whole memory of him keeping those particular snippings of his community on his person for whatever reason.
Honestly, 99% of David's actions are Florida Man titles.
Well, here's just a summary of some of my favorite hits. Florida Man tries to kill daughter-in-law for getting pregnant during her tenure as a working girl. Plot twist, he is the father of her child. That's from Tamar and Judah, Genesis 38. Florida woman becomes working girl for a day to screw her father-in-law, gets pregnant and blackmails him. Genesis 38 again. Florida man duped on his wedding night, marries fiance's sister. Genesis 29. Florida man gains his father-in-law's stamp of approval by delivering 200 bloody trouser snake skins from Samuel 18. Florida man who once faked schizophrenia to escape rival gang and swindled his own church becomes anointed one. Samuel 21. Obese Florida man shanked to death, weapon lost in fatty folds. Bonus, murderer escapes because victim's attendants think he's using the bathroom. Judges 3. Florida man gets hair stuck in tree, killed by dad's second-in-command. Samuel 18. Florida woman hammers tent stake through sleeping man's head. Judges 4-5. Florida man begs half-sister to cook him chicken nuggets and then R-words her. Samuel 13. Florida man takes substances and murders half-brother as revenge for inter-family R-word. Samuel 13. Florida governor's scheme to cover up scandal fails when local war hero refuses to sleep with his own wife. Governor turns to murder. Samuel 11. Florida governor tells Florida man to bring him the outer skins of the naughty bits of 200 Californians in exchange for his daughter's hand in marriage. Florida man claims superhuman strength until Florida woman cuts off his mullet. Florida man trades entire inheritance to his brother in exchange for some baked beans? Actually, like pretty much everything Jacob and Esau did in Genesis is 100% Florida man. Florida man dresses up as goat to prank blind father. You won't believe what happens next. Florida man marries 2 wives and so does his brother. Florida man wrestles social worker in parking lot before gang feud. How about that one that's come up a few times already? Entire town's male population gets their bits snipped so that the leader can marry a foreign woman. Then her family kills all of the men while recovering. How do you even bring this up to other men in the town?
Look guys, I really want to marry this chick, so I need you all to do me a solid and let this guy snip ya.
Florida women fight over baby until Florida man threatens to cut it in half.
Oh, can I get the legs? I'll take the legs. Let her have the top part.
Florida man paints door with sheep's blood. Said it was to protect his firstborn son. 3 days later, drags his family through a river running from the cops. Not heard from again for 40 years. Florida man kills pro fighter with a rock. Brings projectile weapon to implied melee challenge. Bends rules, but result is accepted.
I mean, what are you gonna do? Unkill Goliath?
Florida man spends entire night in lion enclosure, emerges next day unharmed. Wait, I've seen this one. It's on Netflix. It's called Tiger King, right? Florida governor sends soldier to his death to make widow his mistress.
That's King David for ya.
Florida man impales couple after seeing them engage in extramarital coupling. Florida man with fancy coat, sold into slavery by his brothers, manages to become lieutenant governor of California. Pranks family when they come asking for food assistance. Florida man goes on roid rage and kills hundreds with the jawbone of a donkey. Gets stripped of his manhood by Florida exotic dancer. If there's any figure in the Bible who embodies the essence of Florida man, it's Samson. Florida man offers up daughter to really thirsty mob. Florida man with superpowers uses them to make alcohol. Florida man builds giant boat in backyard because the voice told him to. Next up, local zoo is baffled. Police investigation stalled due to inclement weather. Florida man mandates to have every child under 2 in his town taken care of. Claims that with that, he'll make sure God's child won't usurp his throne. I don't remember Herod's story that well. Sorry if there are any mistakes.
I think it was Herod's advisors saying that the people were talking about their prophesized king being born. So Herod decides to kill all the babies to make sure that he'd never be overthrown.
Florida man gets swallowed by big fish while fishing. Runs around in circles until he was all pooped out. Florida men throw brother into a ditch to steal his Pride Parade coat. Local religious guy gets made fun of by gang of youths for his lack of hair. He calls bears, or Florida gators, on them, not sure which, and kills them all. When it comes to the mass murder of innocent younglings, people always want to understand the killer's motive. Unfortunately, in this case, Jacksonville police say that it appears Florida man was overly sensitive about his male pattern baldness and initiated the wild animal attack as an act of revenge. Balding Florida man collapses neighbor's house on them. No survivors. Florida man claims devil responsible for drowned herd of pigs. Florida man threatens to cut small infant in half over custody battle. Samson is the Florida man story. This is just the right answer. The entire Samson story is a wild ride, and Samson himself is such a bizarre figure in the context of the rest of the book of Judges. It's like God was just tired of sending wise prophets who nobody listened to, so instead he gives Israel the Hulk and just lets things unfold naturally. Undressed man steals apple from local orchard, blames undressed wife, who in turn blames talking snake. Or consider Florida couple loses naturalist country club membership for produce theft, lays blame on talking snake. Florida woman touches attempted murderer's feet with fresh cut skin of weenie. Honored, the assailant backs off. Florida man moves to wilderness, wears camel skin, eats bugs, preaches against establishment, and ends up with head on silver platter. Florida man calls for wild bears to attack group of children. They had it coming. They made fun of my bald head. Florida man murders brother after family mocks him for veganism. Florida woman tells boyfriend that God made her pregnant. Then 3 men he'd never heard of come to the birth of his child. Florida man flips table at religious buildings and chases occupants out with whip made from the blinds. This is my favorite one. I like to remind people that ask me, what would Jesus do? That running around flipping tables and whipping people is within the realm of possibility. Pregnant Florida woman claims she's a virgin, insists that the father is God. Florida man curses at fruit tree for not bearing fruit in winter. A better question would be, what Bible story wouldn't qualify as a Florida man story? Florida child spends 3 days arguing with lawyers, just doesn't have the same ring to it, I guess. Florida wakes up and crawls out of the earth after 3 days missing, claims to have died and been resurrected. Florida man gets bored waiting for brother to finish coming up with house rules, starts cult. Florida man marries wrong woman because her veil was too opaque and he couldn't recognize her. Florida men, jealous of brother's outfit, sell him into slavery and fake his death. Florida man becomes presidential chief of staff because he's good at dream interpretation. Florida woman gets pregnant at age 90, names child Lamau. Okay, that last one had to take some research for me to figure out the reference. So, folks, I have been incredibly impressed with just how many stories from this religious text can indeed look like a Florida man headline. We've made it to halfway through the video, but there will be some repeats soon, I'm sure. Hopefully reworded in an equally humorous way. Florida man attempts to sacrifice own son. Ceremony ends anticlimactically. I was just doing what God told me, went on Abraham as he sharpened his dagger. I didn't want to hurt my son, but when you have 9 of them and God asks you for one, I was like, well, if you say so. I could use the insurance anyway, and one less mouth to feed. Later, when interviewing the son in question, he responded,
Oh, I didn't really think much of it. He climbs that mountain every day, and I thought we were going to play a fun game. These times are kind of boring, so being tied down to a rock sounded fun, and I just had one too many to drink. It wasn't until he pulled out the knife that I was like, nice prank, bro. And then he stopped and started talking to the sky. Then he cut the ropes and we went home.
Florida man goes on rampage, whips street vendors outside his father's house. Florida man drops acid and talks to Bush. Comes back with 2 tablets of rules to live by. I mean, considering that the bush that was engulfed in flames was actually an acacia, which contains high levels of 5-methoxy-N-dimethyltryptamine in the bark, my dude Moses might have genuinely been visiting the Shadow Realm. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to Am I the Genius? Florida man builds house on sand, is shocked and homeless when it falls apart. The parable about the idiot who built his house on sand and the smarter neighbor who built his house on the rock. There's a hurricane and everything. I'm thinking Deuteronomy 23:12-13. Florida man needs instructions about where and how to go poop. Designate a place outside the camp where you can go to relieve yourself. As part of your equipment, have something to dig with, and when you relieve yourself, dig a hole and cover up your excrement. Noah, that guy was drunk, hearing God's voice, the boat, the people, the animals, the actual frickin' rain, and he manages to save people with his activities. All of it. Noah, hands down. Well, Florida's really going to be underwater in a few hundred years, so all he'd be doing is jumping the start line a bit. Florida man says, maybe we should all try to be nice to each other for once, before being executed by Florida government at the behest of special interest groups. Florida man given designer coat. 11 siblings promptly sell him to human trafficking ring in retribution. Florida man who was trafficked and serving life sentence is pardoned and appointed Lieutenant Governor of New York. How this humble farmer went from slavery and prison time to becoming the second most powerful man on the East Coast. Mulleted Florida man kills 1,000 men in jawbone rampage. Not the right time to discuss bone violence, says GOP. Pretty much everything involving Ezekiel. Florida man sees wheel way up in the middle of the air. Florida man mysteriously goes mute, creates scale model of New York. Florida man arrested for grave robbing, claims he was performing an incantation to raise a vast army of the dead. Balding Florida man sics pet bear on small children for pointing out his baldness. Florida man killed on toilet in dispute with neighbor. Murder weapon found stuck in victim's fat rolls. Florida man and his Tinder date were traveling from Tallahassee to Jacksonville when they had to stop for the night in an unfamiliar town. An old man took them into his home, but after a few hours of partying, a gang of crazy R-wordists arrived and demanded to do the deed with Florida man. The old man replied, "Since this man is my guest, don't do this outrageous thing. Look, here's my virgin daughter and his date. I'll bring them out to you now and you can use them and do to them whatever you want." The story continues. The man took his Tinder date and sent her outside to them, and they did awful things to her throughout the night, and at dawn they let her go. At daybreak, the woman went back to the house where her master was staying, fell down at the door, and lay there until daylight. The poor woman who'd returned beaten and misused to the door of her man, hoping for comfort and love, passed away in a time of hopeless desperation. So, what did Florida man do? He took a knife, cut up his Tinder date limb by limb into 67 parts, and sent them into all the counties of Florida. This disgusting act was not punished by God or the state of Florida. Instead, they went to war with the town from which those men had come and slaughtered thousands of unrelated people in the name of God. Florida man attempts to unalive his son, says God told me to, and kills goat as consolation prize. Florida man removes rib to create spouse. Florida man bludgeoned brother to death with rock. Florida man claims to have spoken with flaming bush. Florida man becomes victim of unspeakable act by own family. Florida man escorts pregnant young woman into motel, insisting he's not the father and she's a virgin. Not talked about much, but in the book of Judges there's a story about a guy who's just the worst king. Long story short, his subjects run up to a high tower and basically tell him they're not going to listen to him anymore. Well, he takes his armies and tries to break in, and some lady drops a rock on his head. The king turns to his soldier and says, "Quick, end me now so they won't be able to say a woman killed me," and homeboy just straight up does it. Super underrated story, and I might have messed up some details, but it gets me every time and feels like a really Florida man move. Florida man conducts surgical operation on manhood of newborn son. We discuss the health benefits at 11. Florida man tells Jewish authorities he's going to tear down their house and build it back in 3 days. Florida man collects every animal on Earth for boat ride. Florida man reportedly swapped guests' food with his own blood and flesh during religious dinner ceremony, arrested that night for unrelated charge. Florida man follows death row inmate, drops loincloth and runs away undressed to avoid getting caught. Florida woman is thrown from window and her body is eaten by stray dogs.
Let's focus on some of the details here.
Florida man convinces butler to throw his mistress out of second floor window, where her starved Dobermans eat her. Florida man then drives over her corpse. Florida man claims to be 900 years old. Florida man, likely high on crystal, grabs donkey jaw and kills 1,000 men with it. Man has haircut, claims he can no longer destroy buildings or fight lions. Florida man with ability to create food for hungry people instead gets angry at tree and stops it from ever creating food for hungry people.
You forgot a part. It should be Florida man gets mad at tree for not making fruit out of season.
Florida man kills brother because his brother had better vegetables. Florida man accused of healing the sick, feeding the poor, and teaching about basic human kindness, sentenced to death by local government. Well, this is the least damning one I could find. Sorry folks, I'm not going out of my way to single out Christianity. This is just the nature of the forum we took these answers from. And you know, this stuff is in the book. Local man asked to bake bread over poop. Local man agrees to sacrifice daughter in exchange for winning battle. Local emperor holds casting couch for replacement queen. Local couple eat fruit, doom humanity. Local women argue over baby, king suggests dividing baby in half. Florida man trades birthright for soup. Florida man escapes police custody, skinless and screaming like a maniac. Some sources say that he was going to be executed with an oversized KFC chicken fryer. Florida man ties 300 foxes together by their tails and lights them on fire. Florida man accidentally marries ugly sister. Immediately suggests open marriage with the hot sister too. Florida father-in-law agrees to plan. Florida man claims wife is virgin. 3 men arrive at the birth with gifts. Florida man curses fig tree because he wanted a fig even though it was winter. Florida man has feelings hurt by kids and unleashes wild bear on them. Florida man caught with extensive menagerie of exotic animal breeding pairs. Bible stories aren't that crazy for that time. You could frame any ancient story as a Florida man headline, or any historical person for that matter. Diogenes was the Florida man of ancient Greece. Florida man cuts up a murdered concubine and ships her body to different states. Florida man's family get him drunk and do the deed with him so they can bear his children and carry on the family lineage. Literally about any of them if presented properly. For example, Florida man fakes own death, hides out in cave for 36 hours to escape capital punishment. Florida man takes 40 years to finish 11-day journey. Claims to have split the sea and walked through it. Also claims to have eaten food that rained down from heaven. Man gets eaten by whale, survives until he's spit out again. Florida man blames wife for banishment from sacred garden. Florida man kills entire local police department with animal jaw. Florida man viciously beats and murders over 1,000 ethnic minorities in near South Annan shores. Investigators claim he used the jawbone of a donkey. Thieves in church are scared off after Florida man flips some tables. Florida man claims to be son of God, is killed by cop. Florida man murders brother so he could do the deed with his mother. Florida man arrested for suspected property damage, released after police discover he was breaking up an illegal racketeering ring happening in the suspect's own residence. Florida man commands cult followers to eat his body and drink his blood. Florida man breaks into petting zoo and steals 2 of every animal, flees the scene in pickup truck with houseboat attached. Florida man threatens to cut infant in half to end paternal dispute in his community. A Florida man, recently placed in state custody after he was found hoarding hundreds of different animal species on a boat he was building in his yard in anticipation of hurricane season, says everyone else will perish for their sins when the next big storm arrives. Florida woman gives birth to baby boy, still claims she's a virgin, despite the confusion of the 3 wealthy men who arrived soon after. Florida public wants death penalty for Florida teacher accused of working on Sundays. Florida man claims to have wrestled with an angel. Florida man casually watches sky while chilling with lions. Florida man builds a big ship full of animal poop and tries to warn everybody that the earth is going to get flooded. As far as I'm concerned, the entire gosh darn Bible qualifies as a collection of Florida man short stories. 2 government officials surprised to find family that doesn't try and do the deed with them in Miami. Florida man brings son to top of Splash Mountain, attempts to shank him because God was testing me. Florida man seized a city with an army of trumpets, deafening them to the crumbling infrastructure. Police ticketed them for noise complaint. Florida man and Florida woman run from town of Eden after taking substances and hallucinating a talking snake. Florida man and doomsday cult destroy local moneylender businesses, leader given the death penalty. Florida man emerges from desert wearing camel skin and eating grasshoppers, claiming the savior of the world is coming. Florida man goes on all-day wine bender on Friday and reappears on Sunday believing he died. Florida man found battered with dislocated hip. Claims he wrestled an angel and won. What you guys told us you're hiding from your kids. These secrets are insane. That we're divorced. Years before they came along, spouse and I decided that it just wasn't working out and we got divorced. Years later, things still weren't working out fantastically for either of us, so we got back together. Never did get around to getting remarried though. I'm hiding that I don't actually enjoy watching Mickey Mouse Clubhouse. My 2-year-old would be devastated because that's our show.
I was so relieved when my kids started watching SpongeBob.
My parents told me my sister is adopted. They didn't tell her. She's 34. By the way, help, what do I do?
You could buy the whole family DNA tests for Christmas and watch the world burn.
I'm the child, but my dad waited till I was grown up to tell me that my mum gave me a lot of sleeping pills when I was a little child, so that she could leave me alone at home to maintain her relationship with her lover, while my dad was working in another country. You know, that cleared up quite a few things. Meanwhile, I've been dealing with depression and anxiety for a few years, but I'm not sure if this links to any developmental issues from the pills. I'm pretty good at being depressed, to be honest. Otherwise, my life is really good. I want to clear up that I'm on okay terms with my mum. She learned from her mistakes and I forgave her. I just don't forgive her that she did my dad so dirty. My dad's the greatest person I've ever known and he deserves to be happy. My daughter knows that her grandparents are getting a divorce. She doesn't know that it's because Grandpa, who's 72, decided to knock up a 23-year-old. We'll talk about it once she's older, but I don't want to normalize the relationship for a pre-adolescent. To answer some questions, this is my father-in-law. He's definitely not rich. He's in fairly impressive shape for a guy pulling Social Security, but I'm happily ignorant as to the state of whether his Johnson works without medication. Thank you for asking. It's a small-town story with a messed-up single mum and an old man that hasn't experienced much emotional growth since being drafted for service in Vietnam. These people would never normally end up together if they were emotionally healthy and didn't have control issues. I'm definitely going to do my best to explain to my daughter, but she's 9 and emotionally overwhelmed by the very idea of the divorce. When she comes to talk to me about it, having processed the idea, then I'll explain the situation more fully. My husband has already told his dad that our family and his new family won't be getting together for a barbecue anytime in the foreseeable future. Okay, update number 2. A lot of you guys are assuming a lot about the 23-year-old. I'd remind you that we're talking about small-town, single mama, daddy issues, rural deep south, grandpa effing 23. You guys are all a bunch of optimists. That I got all of these bedtime facts from Reddit. I don't know which bits of information in my brain are from that infernal website and which ones aren't anymore. The fact that my work stories are all other people's anecdotes, which may also be entirely fabricated, is a conundrum I never foresaw myself having when I was thinking about what I'd do when I grew up. Oh well, back to the parent stories. That she can't have a relationship with her grandfather because he's wanted for some pretty heinous crimes, and I'd never trust him around children. The rest of my family maintains a relationship with him and leans on me hard to open up communication because apparently, family comes first. They're absolutely right. My family does come first, which is why my daughter won't ever have to have a relationship with him. To clarify, many of his crimes were against members of the family. Without going into too much detail, he also has a mental illness, and I've been told that I need to let him have a relationship with my daughter because he's sick and couldn't help it. That we don't go to bed at the same time that they do. I never actually took his nose, it stayed on his face the whole time. In fact, it never once left his face, even though I've told him that I took it countless times. I even showed him the tip of my thumb as evidence of the theft. Whew, I'm sorry you had to read that, but it feels really good to come clean. I'll tell him the truth eventually, but I have to make sure that Mum is on board. For those of you condemning me, your words weigh heavy, but honesty, much like a fire at the circus, is intense. It's not as messed up as some of these others, but it's still a really big secret. I've been living 5.5 hours away from my wife and daughter for the past 11 months. Every time I talk to my daughter, she asks when I'm coming home. Well, little does she know that next Friday when her and her mum come for what she thinks is just a weekend visit, they're actually coming to pick me up for good. To clarify a few things, my move was medically related. I'm a social worker by trade, but haven't worked in the field these past 11 months due to my situation. My wife and I did get divorced, and yes, we did co-parent. However, recently we've decided that the truth is we should have worked harder on being together and are giving it another go. I call her my wife because I never really stopped thinking of her that way. Okay, update. First of all, thank you again for all the many kind words and the show of support. My wife and daughter picked me up earlier this afternoon. We opted not to video the moment as it felt impersonal, and we just wanted to truly enjoy each other's company as we soaked in the monumental occasion. I definitely cried more than my daughter did. Over the course of the day, she became more and more excited and exclaimed, "I can't believe you're coming home." It's been a fantastic day. I don't have kids, but here's a family secret. My mom and I left the straightener on for 12 days while we took a family trip to Canada. It doesn't have an automatic off. We haven't told my dad. The house is fine, the counter was just really hot. This was like 2 years ago. Holy cow, my daughter and I have done this. Bonus story, my husband is a firefighter and was at work the day we forgot. I was mortified at how close he was to having to fight a fire in his own house. So mortified, in fact, of having him discover in full gear my forgotten flat iron that I went back to curly hair. All I could do was look at my daughter and say, "This never leaves this room, sweetie." That my adopted daughter was conceived as a result of the unspeakable act. Experts say you're supposed to give your adopted children all of their history when they're old enough, but honestly, if it were me, I'd rather just not know. We're considering not ever telling her. It weighs heavy on our hearts. She's 15, almost 16. She knows she's adopted and is even in contact with her birth mother, but her birth mother doesn't think she should know this history either. The compelling argument to tell her is this. It's not our right to decide if she knows her history. It's her history and her right to know both good and bad. Kind of the opposite, but on my 18th birthday, my father walked into my room with a bag of green herb and a bunch of rolling papers and showed me the entire hidden portion of our house, which isn't on blueprints and is accessed through a hidden door, where he used to grow green herb. I'd been grounded for smoking it several times by that point in my life. This was in Florida in the 90s. Mine doesn't know the reason that my username is catbarfbath. I was changing my newly adopted kid's diaper and wasn't yet used to the unpleasantness of doing so, gagging and just trying to get through it. I'd been through this several times before and thought it was just my body making a threat, but it wouldn't follow through. Just as I'm trying to finish the cleanup, a nice little liquid squirt was unleashed right onto my arm, and it pushed me over the edge. Not wanting to blow chunks onto my kid, I turned my head to the side and threw it all towards the floor. Of course, one hand was holding two little legs and the other was holding the wipes, so I couldn't try catching it. Guess who was standing down there milling about? Mr. Meow, that's who. My son was the product of the unspeakable act. He thinks that I just had really low standards in men at one point. My wife and I each have a child from a previous marriage. Both of our ex-spouses were horrible, bullying cheaters. Both children still adore and idolize their other parent, and we just keep smiling and nodding. It's a secret that we'll maintain for years. Makes us feel better that we're not the only ones keeping things like this a secret. We are adoptive parents of 3 kids, 2 of whom are biological siblings and cousins. Found out a year after the adoption that the biological parents were half-siblings who shared the same dad. The bio parents found out after they had the first child and proceeded to have another. The kids are now 16 and 13 respectively and have zero clue that they're the product of closer than normal family relations. Unfortunately, their biological grandpa just passed away, so there very well could be a big reveal coming in the near future. Oh, boy. Well, once again, we're in a topic that runs the whole range from the kind of funny, throwaway, jokey answers to things that have a very serious impact on innocent people's lives. Even though these sorts of relationships are rightly taboo, if the kids are healthy, they have no personal shame in the circumstances of their upbringing. It just sucks that it's hard to see it that way when it's you, I suppose. I'm posting here so that when my kids are old enough to snoop, they get a split second of excited expectation before they're greeted by me saying, I really do enjoy doing the deed with their mother. My son was planned, but after separating from his father when my son was 8 months old, and having basically nowhere to go or no way to actually take care of us on our own, many times I thought about the possibility of dropping him off at the hospital and skipping town. I never did, and he's 8 now, and we're very happy. I'm pretty sure they know, but my second cousins are technically twins 2 years apart. Their parents did in vitro, and 2 of the eggs were fertilized. They weren't ready for twins, so they froze one of the eggs and had their second kid 2 years later. It's actually pretty cool. I wasn't super familiar with IVF when this happened, and a lot of people are saying they aren't twins. Doesn't really matter to me if they are or aren't. I just thought it was cool when I was a kid. I was about 9 when the eldest was born. After all the A we dropped, we thought you kids would be flipper babies. My parents were in the high school class of 1968. My dad had actually attended Woodstock. When they got married, in their wedding picture, my mum had flowers in her hair, and my dad had a beard that made him look like Jerry Garcia. Yet somehow I went through my entire childhood and adolescence without realizing that my parents smoke Mary J. They obviously did a good job of hiding it. Then I came home unannounced one day from college, and the house just reeked of it, and it was like a light bulb went off in my head. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to Am I the Genius? The sheer volume of very particular bedroom interest-related toys hidden in our bedroom. There's also a 50-50 chance our eldest was conceived in a club. Okay, let's clear this up. I may be interested in some pretty unconventional stuff, but I am not a swinger. Since meeting my husband, we've been monogamous in the bedroom, although we have engaged in costumed flirty play with other people at clubs and stuff. After reading a bunch of these, I feel pretty good that my most messed up secret is that I eat most of their Halloween or Easter or parade candy when they're at school. Before I found out I was pregnant with my first child, I took a ton of pills. I think it's the closest I've ever come to not being alive anymore. I'd always dealt with anxiety and depression. I feel like the extra hormones put me over the edge. I found out about a week later that I was pregnant. Surprise? I was terrified the entire pregnancy that something would be wrong with him. Luckily, he's completely healthy and is also an incredibly smart child. I've never told anyone. I feel so guilty. I was the kid in the scenario. When I was like 12, my dad died of leukemia. He was never around much, so I didn't see him often, but that was never the secret. I actually remember the day he took off and left us. I woke up one morning and there was a pile of new toys on the living room floor with a note for Mum. Anyway, he started coming around when he received the prognosis. We developed something resembling a positive relationship before he died. When he did, it absolutely destroyed me. I still remember the funeral. I had to be dragged kicking and screaming out of the car because I didn't want to see it. In his will, he left me his car, a Camaro, that I was supposed to get when I turned 16. His parents fought tooth and nail to keep it from me. They were really crappy people. His entire side of the family was. And we eventually just told them to F off and keep the damn thing. Fast forward about 15 years, and I find out that the guy who died was not actually my dad. He was my brother's dad. My real biological dad has been living in the next town over, 20 minutes from my house, my entire life. My entire family knew about it except for me. It was why my grandparents fought to keep the car. They knew I wasn't his son. I still don't know if he knew or not, but I assume so. My maternal grandmother has met him several times in my life. My mum said she never thought it was anything worth digging up. She said she never intended for me to find out. I've still never spoken to him. I know a name and an approximation of where he lives, as of about 10 years ago. Beyond that, I know absolutely zippy-doo about the guy. Grandma said if I ever wanted to meet him, she'd help me contact him. I don't know if I ever will. My kids don't know that I have a copy of Grand Theft Auto hidden behind some books on a shelf. I don't want my son to know that he was an unwanted accident. Even during my pregnancy, I didn't want a child. I was still so young and I had my whole career ahead of me. I wanted to travel the world, finish school, and advance myself in life to the fullest. After he was born, I had a hard time adjusting, and it took a long time for me to fall in love with motherhood. I didn't feel a connection to my son, and felt like the worst mother in the world. Now, I can't stop looking at him or hugging him or crying over him. I'm finishing school and I got promoted at my job. I can have a life and still be a mother as well. I only regret my feeling of not wanting a son because he means so much to me now, and there are no words to describe the deep love that I feel for him. As to why I didn't choose to go to the clinic, before he was born or conceived, I was diagnosed with PCOS and had a slim chance of getting pregnant due to the state of my ovaries. I wanted a child, but didn't want one at that moment. We were not mentally, at least that's how I felt, ready for a child. I wanted a child later in my life. When we found out I was pregnant, we considered going to a clinic. I was scared of everything: carrying the baby, giving birth, terminating it if I had to, the guilt and the regret. A lot of emotions and thought went into this pregnancy. I decided to go through with it. So it was my own fault for keeping him, but I don't regret my decision one bit. I had support and friends and family all around me during and after. I even had a friend who admitted she felt the same way I did after giving birth. I grew up knowing that my mother didn't want me. I was reminded of it almost every day, and it seriously messed me up. I do not want the same for my son. He is wanted. I'm glad we live in a world where awareness of postpartum depression is much more prevalent and there's much less guilt on those who are having trouble adjusting to this huge new part of their life. I'm glad your son is in a loving household, and thank you for sharing. My wife is not the biological mother of our twins. We did IVF, and their biological mother was an egg donor from a country in South America. My wife carried them and gave birth to them, but has no biological connection. We'll tell them someday when they're older. It's a little bit strange, but one looks exactly like me at that age, and the other one looks very much like my brother. For anyone wondering, our twins are 8.5 years old, and my side of the family has known the truth for a long time before the procedure occurred. For whatever reason, my wife decided to tell her family that she was the egg donor, and that I'd donated my specimen, and that we did IVF because we were older and needed medical help to get her preggers. I never understood why, but I went along with it because it was what she wanted. When I was a teenager, I'm 22 now, I found out that when my mum had me, my dad didn't believe I was his kid. He even demanded a paternity test so that he didn't have to pay child support on me, because he really thought my mum had cheated on him during a business trip she'd been on. I don't know why, but a paternity test was never done. Or maybe it was and I've never been told. But it explained why I felt so distant with my dad for the first 10 years of my life. He always favored my older sister more when I was younger and called her daddy's little girl and stuff. I felt like he hated me, and this explained why. Today, he's the best dad ever. I don't know if something shifted or what, but me and him are extremely close now and he loves me endlessly. He's been such a great dad, especially when I was in a very dark place in high school and had really bad depression and anxiety. My mum's a little bit bipolar, so I've always been in a bit of a toxic household, and he was the only one to come and pick me up and just be there for me. I'm the child in this scenario, but my father told me my mother was dead all throughout my childhood, and everybody in the family, my aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents, and stepmother, supported the lie. Not because my mother was on substances or mistreated us or a criminal or even a bad person. Just because they had a huge argument one night and she went to stay with a friend, without me, so he decided she'd never be allowed in my life again. Ever. He wrote her off. On my 18th birthday, she called our house and asked to speak with me. So I found out the truth. We are so poor. My kids are little, so they don't notice. But we struggle a lot to pay the rent and buy groceries. We had our kids kind of young. We were both in grad school, so we're in a weird spot because we both have fancy-sounding degrees that your average person would assume turned into a well-paying job. I'm now a postdoc, and we are notoriously underpaid. Sometimes I think, wow, I have a PhD. You'd think I'd be smart enough to work out how to get more money. But I moved the family internationally for this job, which is another thing that would make you think we had everything sorted out. We just don't. I'm working out how to explain that the chicken we eat is the same kind of chickens that live on a farm. They know that Daddy works with money, but they don't know it's from selling green herb. Legally, I should add. That there's tuna in the fridge, but no matter how much he meows, he can't have it, because I know he'll just sniff it and meow for something else. That I've been changing every clock in the house on New Year's Eve to 3 hours early. At 9 p.m. we celebrate the new year and then hang out for an hour. He thinks he's breaking every rule and has great time. Now he's turning 11, this will never happen again. With phones and being somewhat smarter. I'm the child of a parent that hid something horrible until I was 27. One day, when my parents had just finished a domestic dispute, my dad called me just to get back at my mum. He said, "Do you know something about your harlot mother? She slept with over 30 guys during our first 2 years of marriage." I just sat down and started stuttering. He said, "You know how people have always said you look different than the rest of the kids?" I said, "Yeah." "That's because I'm not your dad. Your mom slept with my best friend and you were conceived. Another thing, your brother," the one just younger than me, I'm the oldest, "belongs to my brother." My mom just bawled in the background without denying it. I just laughed, and then I went into 2 years of therapy. I'm hiding a lot of things. That I used to be an exotic dancer for 10 years, that I was growing up in an awful household, that I partied hard and used to be a part of New York City and Montreal club scenes, that I was kidnapped and taken to another country. There's a lot of things. Now I'm just a boring accountant mum to everyone. Nobody has any clue what I've been through. Crazy what your kids don't know about you. Grandpa's not their grandpa. I didn't find out until I was 30 that my dad adopted me and my mum was married to someone else when I was born. My 15-year-old was looking at those DNA kits in the store. I wonder what surprises it would find. Oh, more than you think, sweetie. I'll tell them someday, just not sure what the right time is. Then again, that's what my parents told me when I asked why they'd never told me about my bio dad until he reached out to me and blew their secret. My daughter was conceived at work, on airport property in the back of a frickin' Ford Focus, while we were waiting for a med flight to land. She knows nothing about this, but tells me she wants to be a pilot when she grows up. The most useful insider secret from my job that everybody should know. As a teacher, we love students who engage during lessons. Any answer, correct or not, is better than silence. And if we see someone's trying, it's much harder for us to fail them. If you ever want to pass a difficult subject at school, just come to class, stay active, and answer questions. Major financial institutions are held up by a very old version of Excel. I work in prison and see a lot of people sentenced for causing a death or serious injury while driving inebriated who otherwise don't have remarkable criminal backgrounds. You think of prison and you think substances or violent crimes, but this is just one of those crimes that can take you from being an average Joe to a felon in an instant. So it's not a big secret, but don't drink and drive, folks, or text and drive. An emergency room doctor told me, when the elevator doors are closing, let them close. A number of people have pointed out to me that this is a great metaphor for life as well. Take it however you want. However, at the time the guy told me, he was telling me quite literally. My mum worked in the ER for 30 years. I was dropping off lunch to her one day and was getting on the elevator to get to her, and I stepped in and there was an EMT with his hand wrist deep inside of a man's chest. I said, oh, frick, and clicked the doors closed. But as they were about to shut, this woman, who looked like those mums who were always exasperated and out of time, barged into the elevator. She instantly faced away from the scene and sighed and said, just my freaking luck. I went to push the button to close the doors again and she slapped my hand and said, hold on, my husband is coming. At the end of the hall, like 150 feet away, this guy strolls into the door, whistling and swinging his keys. I panicked and yelled at her to get the F out, and I pushed her gently out the door and furiously pushed the closed door button. As she started expanding her head with offense and disbelief, the EMT yelled at her to F off, and she threw her purse into the elevator as the door shut. As we started going down a floor, the guy with his hand in another man's chest looks down and says, with zero irony, "You want to split any cash she has?" I'd love to say I had a funny one-liner to answer with, but I was just 16 and was kind of freaked out. The door opens and there's my mum ready to wheel the guy into the operating room. She sees me and says, "Oh, hey baby, can you put my sandwich on my desk?" And then she bellows some kind of ER orders to a bunch of people and vanishes down the hallway. One of her friends was standing there and asked if she could drop off the sandwich, and for some reason I clutched it and said, "No, it's hers." You know, out of all the videos I was reading for this week, I didn't foresee this being the one where we'd have a major Karen encounter. I hope she never found her purse. And I was kind of wondering if it would end up flying into the guy who was being operated on when she threw it. Oh god. Working in behavioral health taught me that if somebody grabs and starts choking your neck, all you have to do is grab their thumbs and twist them back. The person will release you, and you can basically control them with just the thumbs. If someone or something bites you, then you feed the bite. Push the limb they're biting farther into their mouth and it will hit the gag reflex and they'll stop biting pretty quick. Your child's daycare workers really do clean them throughout the day. They're just dirt magnets. God bless daycare workers. They have 4 times the children I do, and they keep them 10 times cleaner. No idea how they do it. On a positive note, the secret I'd like people to know is that anesthesia as a field is incredibly safe. We get really sick patients through surgery every day. Young, healthy people, you'd almost have to try to make something go wrong to have a bad outcome. The meds and safety monitors are so much better than 20 years ago. We're really good at putting people to sleep and waking them up. You're safer in the operating room than you are on the road driving to the operating room, statistically. Pilot here, we're not flying the airplane unless we know it's safe. Not ever. We're not interested in dying either. Passenger who's had pilots take us off a plane because something was wrong. Thank you. Bonus points for a simple explanation of the delay or change. A sensor doesn't seem to be triggering right, but we're going to have the mechanics look at it and get you on a different plane in the meantime. That goes a long way. Librarian here, if you come in to talk to us about book damage or call us to give us a heads up that it's being returned damage, we'll be a lot more amenable to working with you about forgiving damaging fines than if you return it and just hope that we don't notice. Rinsing your produce with just water knocks down 99% of the bacteria on it. It's the best thing you could do to prevent foodborne illness. Bacteria and microbes as a whole are just very small cells or capsules that generally aren't good at sticking to random solid objects by themselves. It's a little like if you were holding onto a rocky hillside and got hit by a sudden giant torrent of water from above. You're probably going to get flushed off to wherever that water's going. Not a completely accurate analogy, but you get the gist. Unless you're talking about biofilms. Those are a problem. Hey, you know how in movies people take out an old, rare book and immediately they're wearing gloves to handle it? You don't actually need gloves to handle old books in rare or special collections. Having freshly washed, dried hands is the best practice. Why? Because when you wear gloves, it's actually more likely that you might accidentally rip a page because you can't feel them as well as you can with bare hands. The only time we wear gloves is when handling artifacts, moldy items, photographs, and poison books. Arsenical, usually. Check out the AmITheA Poison Book Project, it's real cool. And they're not the cotton white gloves you see in media, just a pair of nitrile gloves that fit well. Also, your old Bible is not as rare as you think it is, nor worth as much as you think it is. Same for your book collection. You'd be surprised at how many people think the Bible they have is super rare, when it's really not. The Bible is like the most printed book ever. We have hundreds of Bibles in our collection. Stop giving us Bibles.
You need 2 coats of paint. The advertisements are lies.
Or, if you're a low-cost landlord, 20 coats. 40 over the circuit breaker door. I work at a vet clinic and I've got a few. Yes, your dog or cat needs the rabies vaccine. Rabies is transmissible to humans and it's deadly. Yes, your pet can have fleas even if they never go outside or if your yard is fenced in or if you live in a gated community. Fleas have no concept of property lines. Your local veterinarian is not always the best place to take the turtle you found on the side of the road. Many vet clinics don't see wildlife, and many don't see reptiles at all. Document everything. Don't rely on verbal recounting when you go to management at work. Document it, print it, and bring it with you. Just saying that you have documented something, especially when it's multiple things that all point to an issue, and management is going to be a lot more cooperative. Sometimes it's because it shows initiative, calm consideration, and intelligence, but more often it's because you have the start of a legal case if things go poorly. I work for the Department of Labor in our state. Yeah, there's quite a few corrupt employers who'll not pay their workers, close up shop and then reopen under a different name, or fraudulently put all of their assets under someone else's name. My old boss did this. Before running the restaurant I worked at, he was a plasterer, and he has over 10 plastering businesses under his name, cause he'd get the payments up front and then just disappear, change business names, and do it all again. Me and a bunch of people took him to court for loss of wages at the restaurant, and he got forced to pay $30,000 in damages for both workers and suppliers who were owed money. Sadly, I never got my $2,000 back, and last I saw he was back plastering. Somehow not in jail. The amount of waste that's created in order to fill stores like Walmart and Target with stupid novelty products should make you second-guess your buying habits. A friend once said that when buying a product, you should think about its end of life first. Like, will you donate it, sell it, or dispose of it? I now think about this stuff I buy, and I try to only buy what I'll need or will definitely use. And also think about buying things that can be passed on to others when I'm done with them. If more people thought this way and acted accordingly, the world would be a better place. My wife and I generally refer to those novelty or trinket stores as landfill shops. Always ask for a discount when you shop at a pawn shop or antique store. At least 20% of the time they should be able to do it. Also, check dates. When an item's been there for over 6 months, they really want to sell it. I used to go to pawn shops with a friend who worked at a major brand here. He knew how to read the tags and knew how much they paid and how long they'd had it. He saved me a ton of money. Rebooting fixes a lot of issues. Unless it's a Disney reboot of a timeless classic, in which case you generally just get left with a feeling of emptiness and disappointment. But in case you're actually talking about the computer issues, here's a few more people chiming in with answers. My favorite is when I reboot multiple times and it doesn't fix the problem, and then I do it with IT on the phone and it fixes it. IT guy here, it's a running joke that we have an aura with a radius of around 5 meters within which computers work just fine. As soon as your PC is out of my range, funny crap will start to happen again. Hospitality workers usually don't care as much as you care, but if you're kind to them, they can work magic for you. As a former hospitality worker, yeah, it kinda sucks that you got here at 10:30 p.m. and a room isn't ready for you because our housekeeping was understaffed, and those 2 wedding parties all emptied out late today. Depending on how you play the next few sentences to me, you could get free drinks, lounge access, free meal, a nicer room, but if you make it personal or insult me, you're getting a room at some point, but that's it. Just don't be a jerk at the front desk and you'll be shocked at how much can be done for you. It's incredibly dangerous to cut in front of a tractor trailer. We try to keep at least 2.5 seconds follow distance because we aren't able to stop if anything happens suddenly on the road. My gross vehicle combination weight is usually at around 100,000 or so pounds. It takes more than a football field length to stop.
It's entirely possible that your veterinarian will kiss your kitten's belly when you aren't looking. I mean, what's the point of being a vet if you don't get to take a little belly smooch tax for every kitten? The number of completely incompetent employees working in healthcare settings is appalling. Seriously, I've met people who take care of patients and are concerningly dumb. I had a travel nurse yell at me for being concerned about a patient's temperature because he didn't feel that cold. The guy was hypothermic. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to Am I the Genius? When we tell you we don't have any more of an item in the back, it's because we really don't have any more in the back. Sometimes we don't even have a back at all. Generally speaking, we don't hide stuff in the back. It doesn't sell if it's in the back. We want it to sell. If it's in the back, it doesn't sell. Everything we have to sell is out. That's all. A little air bubble in your IV is completely harmless. Former fast food manager here. Believe it or not, nobody's intentionally trying to screw up your order. We're generally making thousands of orders a day with constant pressure to be faster. Every once in a while, things go wrong or we miss something. We're happy to fix it if you bring it back, and even more so if you aren't a complete butthole about it. Donating money to a library is actually more helpful than donating books to a library. And those donated books, not only are they not being added to the collection, most aren't even worth selling in the book sale. I call it emotional laundering because we're doing the dirty work of throwing them in the trash since the owner couldn't bear to do it. IT just Googles stuff all day long. The secret is that we're much better at Googling than most. I don't know if it's really a secret, but when an animal shelter lists a dog as a certain breed mix, we're 100% guessing. We aren't even sure the breed we listed is accurate. A lot of doggy DNA doesn't show physically, and most breeds share their various physical features with other breeds too. So it's actually incredibly difficult to identify without a DNA test, and those are far too expensive and impractical for a dog shelter. But if it looks like a husky and barks like a husky, it's probably a husky. I only mention it because I do see a fair number of posts of people being surprised their rescue isn't the breed that was listed. When there's a fire, the only sprinkler that goes off is where the actual fire is. They don't all go off like in the movies, and the water in them is usually so gross you'd wish for the fire. Most modern homes, read residential construction, including apartments, are built with the cheapest ingredients, and I'm not sure that they'll last more than 30 years without requiring a substantial level of exterior refurbishing. Most people who work in a library are library associates. A librarian requires a master's in library science. Also, no, library workers don't even get close to reading all day, if at all. Dental professional here, we can't always tell if you floss or not. In most cases, it's very evident when someone has great oral hygiene and flosses, but some people can get away with skipping the floss, likely related to having good genetics. If you have a feeling of impending doom, come to the ED. It could save your life. A sense of impending doom is included on the list of sensations someone might experience when having a severe allergic reaction to a food item. In addition, I had that feeling once. I was completely freaking out. I'd had surgery about a week beforehand and was so bothered by how I felt I went to the ER. Nothing specific, just a weird sense that something was horribly wrong. Nobody at the ER thought it was anything, so they were the ones freaking out when it turned out I had a blood clot in my lung. Suddenly, I became the most tended to patient ever and was admitted. There was a whole big deal. Only symptom was the sense of impending doom. It's real. Airline ticket and gate agent. When we tell you we don't know why a flight is delayed or cancelled, we really don't know. You often get updates on your app before we know there's a delay. We think the bag fees are exorbitant too. We don't make them, it's just our job to collect them. We want to get you on the plane as much as you want to be on it. It makes a lot of extra work for us to rebook. As a casino dealer, we're standing at the same table you're sitting at, and we can absolutely hear you talking about all those sensitive and incriminating topics. And as a nurse, we already know your medical history. You don't need to lie about addictions or embarrassing health issues. We're not going to judge you over the details that we need to do our job properly. I would totally watch a show about casino nurse. I am interested to know whether you quit being a nurse to become a casino dealer, or whether it's a job you did to put yourself through school, or if you're a strange and mysterious individual who caretakes during the day and swindles rich fools at night. I suppose we'll never know. We get all sorts of unique people writing in here. High school students are really behind on reading. It's frightening.
Heavy equipment operators tend to be tired, surly, and addicted to at least a few things. It's genuinely good practice to just stay the F away from any piece of heavy equipment. We love it when you're not around. Bad parents, like the really, really bad ones, are way more common than you think. Way more common. Soul-crushingly common. As a teacher for 23 years, I absolutely agree. People give child protection services a hard time, but they don't realize how horrible a lot of parents are. CPS is just trying to get the horrible treatment of minors stopped. They're overwhelmed with the amount they have to try and fix. But there's widespread and evil emotional and psychological stuff that's nearly impossible to catch because it doesn't leave visual scars. As an architect, now retired, 50% of married couples who take on a major, like down to the studs, house remodel end up in divorce. A lot of us truckers suffer from soul-crushing depression from loneliness, and speaking as an owner of my own truck, a lot of us are always one breakdown away from losing everything. I hope that wherever you travel, little kids are there to pump their arms so you honk your horn. Hospice. We don't kill or assist or do anything to hasten death. The majority of home hospice patients improve if they get more than 3 weeks care. Hospice doesn't make much money, it's more of a community service. Hospice is there to teach all present how best to care for your person. No is always an answer, but guilt lasts forever. Landscape designer. All plants require maintenance. Sorry, the weeds in my yard beg to differ, unfortunately. As a hospital nurse, I've been asked more than once by doctors, okay, what do the other doctors usually do for that? And you know what? Doctors who are willing to ask are the good ones. If you have a doctor that never admits they don't know something, we know they're the one to stay away from. Psychiatrists do not psychoanalyze random people that we meet in social settings or acquaintances or even close friends. Our parents and siblings, however, yes, we very much do diagnose them in our heads. If you pay your kitchen staff enough to care about properly cleaning and maintaining the equipment in your restaurant, it'll last a whole lot longer. Prescription meds in America do not need to cost anywhere near what they do. Pharmaceutical companies waste money like nobody else. In most cases, the company is just charging the absolute maximum amount the market will bear. It's a moral dilemma I struggle with daily. You know how every movie about a profession gets that profession hilariously wrong? Well, I used to be a journalist, and most movies about journalism are pretty accurate. I think it's because whoever wrote the script probably wasn't a firefighter or bomb diffuser, but they probably were a journalist. We will talk about what crappy parents you are, if you are, and how much your kids suck because you're raising them to be mirror image buttholes. It's even worse when the parents suck but the kids are great in spite of it, because I always worry what's going to happen to them because they have to deal with such crappy parents. Also, if you show up to your kid's conference in a shirt that says hot B-word, the entire staff is going to know about it. I work in materials testing for industries like automotive, aerospace, and defense. Our secret? We do not F around. Specs are a holy writ and will be followed. We fire people for cutting corners on paperwork. I once got dragged into a conference room and chewed out for 2 hours, not because I used equipment that was out of calibration, but because I was in the same room as someone who did. That person got suspended for a week without pay. We regularly get audited for compliance to standards and regs that are enforced internationally. Why? Because when people in my field cut corners, people die. Horribly. That's honestly incredibly comforting. Not that people get treated in that way, but that this stuff is taken that seriously. Software developers actually need time to write code. Keeping us locked in useless Scrum ceremonies and endless meetings doesn't get your work done. Just a fun fact, I calculated the past 5 months of meetings, our dev team had an average of 29 hours of meetings per week. No, that's not a typo. No, management is not receptive to any kind of streamlining, and yes, I'm looking for a new job. I worked IT outsourcing for 2 decades. If you knew the outdated programming, lax report security, and general disdain for tech that the biggest financial institutions have for their data production, you'd stick your money in a mattress instead. Painter here. Residential and commercial painting bids are almost always inflated. Never pay to hear a bid. They should always be free, and make sure to get multiple from different places. Unless you're requesting a unique service or an art mural, the material and labor costs are easily calculated per square feet of specific surfaces. Ask for an itemized bid if you feel the contractor is being shady. Any that give you pushback for an itemized bid aren't willing to put good effort into the project. don't accept "we don't do that" when asking for itemized bids. It's a cop-out for poorly managed businesses. And you shouldn't be paying civilian prices for the paint in the bid. We get that 120 gallon of paint for $50 with a Sherwin contractor account. This one might just be my own opinion. I've seen companies do it both ways. I just find it jerkish if homeowners are being charged full price for paint. I've been an industrial and commercial coating specialist for decades, in case you're wondering about my credentials. Tugboat captain pushing barges on the rivers. Every one of those tugboats is being steered by a very bored pilot who's looking at their phone 95% of the time. Maybe even listening to this channel like you are. They glance up every 20 seconds or so and then right back to their phone. If you're a recreational boater out there, stay out of the way. Don't assume that they see you because they don't. They're on their phone. I'm shocked more weekend warriors don't get run over. I'm a personal trainer turned doctor of physical therapy. Exercise makes you healthier, not necessarily skinnier. This rich person habit? I'd adopt it immediately. Guilty billionaire fantasies. Professional cleaners. My boss got rich and upgraded to the daily cleaner does everything, including putting away kids' toys level of cleaning. And man, his kids are going to be spoiled as heck, but what a joy to have a daily cleaned home. Summering. And you got to winter too. I was watching Drive to Survive on Netflix, and the main Red Bull guy said one of the richest people sentences I've ever heard. He turned to some Saudi dude and was like, "Well, you look like you've wintered well." That was like 5 years ago, and I still think about that sentence often. Isolating myself in a lake house for a couple of years until I go insane trying to write a novel, and maybe buy a pair of Crocs. 2-story library with a fireplace, a wrought iron spiral staircase, and rolling ladders. A personal chef, holy F. Never having to think up what to eat for every meal ever again sounds incredible. This is why I've decided I'm going to go to a retirement home when I get old. Man, you never have to cook or decide what to eat ever again. Well, you could just go to prison. Not working. In particular, not working for money. Making myself breakfast at a leisurely hour for the second day in a row because of a snowstorm? I just thought to myself, is this what it's like to be rich? No schedule, you just wake up and do what you feel that day? Getting a massage every 2 to 3 weeks. I like these modest ones. That's a comfortable amount of money, but not quite crazy ultra-rich territory. It's just low enough to ward off me and the others coming to eat you after late-stage capitalism destroys society. Oh, the years I've spent fantasizing about my Bond villain lair. I bet if you spent $300 at Home Depot and watched some YouTube tutorials, you could make that button-activated trapdoor happen, man. Your enemies would just fall into your boiler room and possibly damage the plumbing. Buying stuff without looking at the price tag or having to check my bank account. This was my original definition of being on the road to being wealthy. Basically, being able to walk down the aisle at Sam's or Costco, and if I liked an item, just buy it without having to save for it or check my balance. Bringing friends and family out for dinner and sorting the bill myself. Spoiling my parents. Shrugging at money and fixing things on a whim. I started dating a guy who came from a completely different background than me, and I was talking to him about how I needed to prioritize going to the dentist to fix a tooth, which I'd been putting off because of money. His response was, "Well, go do it then. It's only a couple of $100. Like, yeah, that's the issue. That's a lot of money. It's important to look after your teeth, and I'm getting it done, but that really made us realize that we didn't have the same view of money. My buddy Bob, that's not his actual name, was a trust fund baby. His father had run a US company that you've definitely heard of. He wasn't working and had a 2-bed condo in a nice part of town, a new SUV to drive, and took several international business trips every year. Anyway, I needed a new computer, but I was broke. He said, "You shouldn't buy. They're only about $2,000. I told him I couldn't afford that, and he was quiet for a moment and then just said, "You should just buy it." I swear this really happened. It's like he didn't understand being broke. He took me over to his parents' house once. Really nice place. I remember the next-door neighbor had a revolving parking spot with their daughter's 16th birthday gift Porsche sitting on it. Not being able to chase my dreams and aspirations freely. No budgeting, hoping everything lines up, and having it get derailed because unexpected expenses keep popping up. I'd like to become a hobby pilot and have my own airplane. I owned a Cessna 172 in my 30s. I wasn't rich, just a working slob. It was actually affordable then. I couldn't do that now. I'd take an obscene amount of classes, from elder law to beekeeping to scuba diving, rock climbing and quantum physics, pharmacology and French cuisine. I'd know everything. This has always just stunned me about the billionaire class. You could hire a language professor for what would be, for you, pennies, and just have them travel around with you teaching you Russian or whatever. You could have a full-time woodworking instructor. You would have the resources to legitimately become the best educated person in the history of humanity. And you'd rather work? Go on holidays without looking at the prices of anything. High-end hotels and resorts, nothing but the best. The wife and I treated ourselves and stayed at the Ritz-Carlton for a change on our last trip. It was just so nice just knowing that everything was guaranteed to go well with our stay. There was no, sorry, your room isn't ready yet. There was no finding a hair on the bed, no hearing the shower running from the next door room, no grumpy employees, just complete peace of mind. On top of that, just being a very nice hotel overall, of course. I wish all of our hotel stays could be like that. Oh god, yes. Imagine just defaulting to first or business class as well. Not having to care about where you are in economy and what seat just because you default to the best. Oh man. I've been on 2 first-class flights out of like 10 economy flights and they're just something else. Quality of life has actually improved. It's not just some random luxury that isn't worth it. It literally takes flights from a 5 out of 10 to an 11 out of 10, no question. Retire immediately. I would anonymously go on GoFundMe postings looking for people in need of miracles like paying off surgeries and funerals and stuff, and just pay them completely. A couple of years ago, a high school girl in my town was killed by a hit-and-run driver. She was from an underprivileged family. Her mother couldn't speak English, so on the local news site, it was the older brother being interviewed. I followed the info from the article and I donated to their GoFundMe for the funeral. I felt bad that at the time I could only afford to give them $50. And the brother wrote me a heartfelt email and it made me cry. If only I could be rich. Taking a vacation without worrying how the loss in pay will affect my ability to pay bills. I'd get a personal assistant for my appointments and looking up stuff I don't want to look up, planning my trips, that kind of thing. Disappear. My biggest confusion of people having billions of dollars is not shutting the F up. You won the system. You could literally sit back and do nothing other than vacation and throw money at charities your entire life for generations to come, but instead these wealthy people think they're entitled or obligated to meddle in public affairs and government. If I had $1 billion, I'd set up an affordable housing charity and then F off. I'm tired of replying to individual comments. If you stan Elon or Bezos, you're a class traitor and a bootlicker. Quit praising rich people who'd let you die if it earned them a quick buck. Damn, some of you all need class consciousness. There was an interview with Jeff Bezos' girlfriend or wife or whatever a while ago, and she talked about how dedicated and hardworking he was. He gets up to make pancakes at 10 a.m. every day, no matter if he has a meeting scheduled or not. The lack of awareness was baffling. I honestly think having pancakes every day seems like it would be a frickin' chore. I'll keep eating my grim oatmeal 6 days a week, thanks. That way, when I occasionally get something else, I'll appreciate it all the more. You know what I'd do? I'd go see a dentist. A couple of friends of mine are dink, dual income, no kids. And the husband does what he calls star collection, by which I mean that he and his wife go to Michelin-starred restaurants, sometimes flying to different locations, and he keeps a little journal about each of them. He asks for the wine labels, typically keeps the menu, takes photos of the food, writes a little blurb about the stuff he liked or disliked. It would be a pretty baller coffee table book someday, I think. Funny thing is, though, his wife is super finicky. She doesn't eat fish or cheese and doesn't care for sweets, so the experience is almost always wasted on her. But if I were rich, sure, I'd do that. Building a labyrinth that connects all of my fancy buildings underground. My husband isn't rich by any means, but he eats like he is, and it's actually amazing. Tasting menus aren't bullcrap. They are overpriced, but some of them are so frickin' good. He took me to Porto in Chicago for my birthday 4 years ago, and I can still remember my favorite dishes so much. Even the water was amazing. It was a salty mineral water to go with the seafood. The meal was probably about $800 altogether, so obviously not worth it to most people on the planet, but gosh darn I wish everyone could experience a beautiful tasting menu at some point in their lives. Custom-made shoes and boots. I have crazy high arches and insteps, so shoes made just for my weird feet would be wonderful. I want to be able to anonymously donate crap tons of money like the fairy godmother. Using the words summer, winter, spring, and fall as verbs.
I mean, fall as a verb is more of an old person thing than a rich person thing. Oh please. Oh please. Rich old people autumn down the stairs.
If we're talking Bezos or Musk rich, I'd have a blast. This isn't something rich people do much anymore, but I'd solve problems with my money and I'd put my name on everything. There'd be free trade schools everywhere, and I'd have a high-speed nationwide rail line with my name on it. There'd be a chain of cheap social and athletic clubs like the YMCA, but you could stay there. I'd build free rooms, massive blocks of them, literal self-storage in every city that would auto-clean themselves every 24 hours. I'd build rehab centers and mental health facilities and embarrass the government by fixing crap they can't handle with tax dollars. I'd try and become the safety net that society is failing to provide. Mystery used to be a rich person thing too. People would see my name everywhere but have no idea who I was. I'd pretty much be heli skiing or kayak fishing while all of this was going on. I definitely wouldn't tweet or give interviews. Our rich are short-sighted little boys playing with toys. For all of their faults and union busting, the Rockefellers and Carnegies and Fords cared about legacy and to some degree bettering society in their own ways. Buying groceries without worrying about whether I went over budget. House staff. We're talking cleaner, personal trainer, and masseuse. I would never again wash and style my hair myself. Being able to travel wherever I'm feeling. I'm having a few abroad trips this year and I'd like to travel more places, but simply lack the money for it. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to Am I the Genius? Outrageous acts of random charity. You know the common ones, like tipping servers way big tips in cash. I'd have it in an envelope and I'd hand it over as I left, then just enjoy imagining them opening it and treating themselves. I'd also go to stores in poor areas around back-to-school time and pay for like 20 families' supplies. Then I think I'd probably keep a team on retainer to go and fix stuff in people's houses. Like their full-time job would be working for me, but they'd go out and about to places I'd noticed needed fixing, offering free repairs. I'd have so much fun with this. Like billionaire rich? Build public libraries and parks and stuff. Take my family on a nice vacation. Having my own gym floor in my house. Helping other people who need it. I know that's not actually a rich person thing, but, you know, philanthropy is definitely something I'd get into too. My partner and I would live comfortably without bells and whistles because we don't need much. Both of us feel strongly about differing causes, so I'd be helping homelessness, families in poverty, and marginalized groups like ex-offenders. She'd look after all the cats and cute animals. Own a dog rescue organization with a no-kill policy. I'd buy a ranch, hire people, and work myself with the pets. Eat avocado toast every day, and occasionally even buy a slightly overpriced coffee. Whoa, calm down. That's too much money even for rich people. Not worrying about the cost of necessities. I'd be really into owning a house. Maybe even more than one house. Excuse me while I cry in millennial. Having a staff clean my house, cook for me, shop for me, I don't want to do anything. I know it's really bad for the environment, but the thought of taking a private jet from my home to my destination and avoiding having to deal with airport terminals and connecting flights seems like a dream. I'm not saying the millionaires are right, but I understand. Or being driven in like a little cute RV or party bus, onboard bathroom, no responsibilities, just being able to relax and then boom, you're at your destination. I'd love to play polo. Okay, you may be fairly novel as the first person who wasn't already rich who thought that seemed like a worthwhile sport. Polo and lacrosse are like the two sports beloved by the upper class that look ridiculous to everyone else as far as I know. Actually, I guess maybe horse people could get behind polo just by the dint of it involving their favorite things. If by rich you mean a multi-billionaire, I'd open up non-profit shelters for street animals, domestic violence victims, and those who were fleeing partners who had mistreated them. I'd tie up with the government and build shelters for the poor, and help them build skills to live life with their heads held high. I'd open up a chain of restaurants that operates on low profit margins and high-quality food, funneling all profits into growth, and I'd employ said people from above at above-par wages. I'd open a cinema with the largest IMAX GT screen ever made, and a few normal screens, having 70mm, IMAX 70mm, and 35mm capabilities. Play 70mm IMAX films for a few shows a month, And also have a film club where you pay an annual fee and get discounted tickets, food, and also get to watch world cinema and classics that would be played twice a week at no extra cost. Have a fund to the tune of $10 million a year where those in need of major surgeries and healthcare can apply and get their procedures done for free. I'd buy a weird old house and make it weirder. Secret passages everywhere. Bookcase doors, a backless wardrobe that leads to a room made to look like Narnia, seal up a clock inside the walls. You get the idea. I'd get into real estate. I'd build lower-income real estate and build medium-sized 3 to 2 bedroom homes in a nice neighborhood with a community center and parks with fruit trees and community gardens, as well as shopping centers and schools. Having staff do everything. I didn't grow up rich, but we had a dog walker and an ironing lady. In my 20s, I had a cleaner. Life is so much easier when somebody else does things that you don't want to do. I think I'd hire someone to manage me. I have ADHD and horrible time management. Funding public parks, fountains, and other decorations. It was popular back when my country stopped existing for a while. Vacations. Those sound fun. Get my dental and medical issues taken care of without having to argue with the damned insurance company. Be debt-free. Commissioning cars. The Sultan of Brunei and his brother commissioned Rolls-Royce and other brands to build one-of-one cars just for the family. I'd hire a driver. I really don't like to drive. Since I have a painful, by which I mean exhausting genetic illness, I'd get all of the treatments. Hypnotherapy, massage, acupuncture, baths, saunas, surgeries, over-the-counter medicines, and I'd have a fancy bed that allows me to adjust it to whatever I need for the day. I'd get the nice body pillows too. And I'd drop off laundry service. Mentally, I don't mind doing laundry, but it's painful. Same for other housework. I'd sure get a house cleaner to come over at least once per week to do all of the chores that are hard for me. Then I'd throw myself into my art practice and hire a studio assistant to help me do all of the marketing, cataloging, selling, entering competitions, and shows.
2 words. Fancy luggage. Buying art.
Well, you can buy art right now. Just check out DeviantArt and you could have an entire museum of Sonic the Hedgehog in various stages of dress and compromising positions on a pretty reasonable budget. One of my favorite paintings, or my top one, depending on which day you ask, is The Roses of Heliogabalus, which belongs to a man I imagine to be insanely rich who has an entire private collection that he lends to different museums around the world. I had the opportunity to see it in person in Madrid. But man, nothing has radicalized me as much as sitting down in front of that painting and knowing it was owned by someone who was just going to take it home after a week. I could have wrung his neck. I'd just get more into 2 things that I already love: travel and sushi. 3 meals a day would be nice. Stress-free good night's sleep. Oh god, 2 chicks at the same time.
I bet if you had $1 million, you could get 2 chicks at the same time.
I would have the best medium-sized cabin on the most beautiful lake. Having a cellar that's divided into wine, cheese, and meat areas. Buy a coffee shop that makes no money. Let my wife create her personal huge library the way she wants it. A full medical evaluation and real treatment. Buying elections and politicians. I'd buy them and get them to pass clean energy bills, universal healthcare, UBI, affordable housing, taxes on the rich, yes, even myself, and cutting the military budget. All the good stuff. I'd have to be a mega billionaire for that, but I look at the billionaires we have and I get so angry because they could be doing so much good for the country and entire world. Charity. Yeah, I'd fully fund the county's new animal shelter and set aside some kind of annuity or thing to make them money each year. Helping others in need. Falconry. Exploring the Mariana Trench. Chef or masseuse, or a landscaper. I guess I'd break down and buy myself a Supreme Court justice or 2. How cooked are we when a justice conceivably has to be bribed to do things in the average person's common interest? I'm assuming that's what this commenter means anyway, but then again, maybe they're just hoping to make whatever weird things they're obsessed with legal or illegal. Not living every day of my life in constant anxiety that I could lose my house and everything else if I encountered the slightest financial hiccup. Also, I'd travel. Backyard oasis, ideally with a sauna, cold plunge, hot tub, pool, and massive outdoor kitchen. I'd have my own harem, but instead of 20-year-old women, it would be full of men who are twice my age. Concierge medical services like a private doctor. No fighting with insurance companies for prior authorization. No wait times. Not having beneficial tests denied. Luxury travel and multiple homes. I don't think I'd even leave the States as much as I would just want to travel and work from another location, while maintaining all the conveniences of working from home. That's assuming I was still working, of course. I'd turn summer and winter into verbs. Sailing a decent-sized sailboat around the world. Not one of those tiny D-energy super yachts. An actual sailboat that you sail yourself. Sue everybody. Open animal shelters all over the country and hire the best people to run them and pay them a decent salary so it becomes a viable career option. Collecting cars. It doesn't matter if they're multi-million hypercars or a 3K Beta from Marketplace. All cars are mostly unique and special in their own way. Private yachts to sail around the world with a private chef and lots of courtesans aboard. Dental. Affording rent. Actually owning things instead of renting. High-quality food instead of looking for bargains. I don't know, the list kinda just gets longer the more I think about it. Nepotism with my future children. My rich person thing would be flying by private jet. I hate having to get packed into cramped seats with the rest of you losers. I'd build and fund artists' colonies. Having people come to you instead of traveling. Doctors, barbers, real estate, massage people, the non-raunchy kind, they can all lug their gear to your place. Having a chef and housekeeper. Seeing a doctor whenever I was concerned about my physical or mental health. Sailing or golf. Philanthropy, like seriously making a difference to the world. All finished basement full of Lego sets. Okay, so unpopular opinion, I actually miss this part of the pandemic. I live in Yosemite National Park. No visitors were allowed in during the initial lockdown, so it was only the employees who lived in the park that got to enjoy spring that year. No one on the mist trail on a fine spring day in May, no cars at Tunnel View for sunrise, no gummies at Swan Slab, no careless influencers trampling the meadows. The birds were loud, the bears were comfortable, the dogwood blooms didn't get picked and ruined. I miss that. I miss having the valley to myself. It's so selfish, but man, what an experience. The quiet. In the big city where I live, there were various lakes and ponds around, and during the pandemic I could hear the frogs chirping like crazy in the evenings instead of traffic. It's really sad how it could be described as otherworldly. It should be this worldly. Empty streets. I had to drive into my office in Manhattan one day in April 2020 because I had an issue with my work laptop. 70 miles per hour through the Holland Tunnel, and I parked on the street in front of the building. I doubt anyone will experience that again. It looked like a movie set for a post-apocalyptic zombie flick. The lack of traffic was nice. Post-pandemic effect was brutal though. Not sure if we'd gotten used to the light traffic or just that many people forgot how to drive. The pace of life almost felt like how life should be. Less traffic, less crowded streets, less noise. More time to appreciate people at home. Some jobs could commute. Even people who had a variety of opinions on the pandemic details seemed to have a community of sorts within their said beliefs. It just feels like modern society is chaotic for no good reason, and the pandemic slowed things down for a short minute there. It really showed the fakeness of modern life. Waking up and going into the office was totally unnecessary. Yet this single action is how most people define their adult lives. I tried to explain this to my mother yesterday. Modern life doesn't actually feel good. Humans aren't designed to wake up and immediately throw themselves into tasks that accomplish nothing more than basic survival to allow us to continue to work. We're meant to experience all that our wonderful planet has to offer. Yet 99% of the population will spend almost every waking moment slaving away, some of them quite literally. Generally, I agree. I'm of the opinion that even though the pandemic was rough, it really did have a big old silver lining in how it revolutionized the way a lot of people worked for the better. It couldn't do it for everyone, yet, but for those of us slobbing away in offices, we came out better.
Okay, this is a weird one, but clean supermarket baskets. Actually, just clean stuff in general. The moment it was no longer mandated, everything went back to being filthy. You'd think there'd be minimum standards of hygiene in places that sell produce. I mean, I'm pretty sure a corner grocer would get in trouble for having baskets as gross as Woolworth's baskets always are.
I was in food service during the pandemic. It was hilarious to see how all of a sudden management took sick workers seriously. It didn't even have to be COVID. People with colds or the flu all of a sudden were given time off with no questions asked. If you've ever worked food service, it's alarming the amount of sick people around your food. What's even funnier is I personally saw the rise and fall of that behavior. It took about 18 months for management to go back to the whole, "Oh, you're sick? We'll need you to be here anyways" kind of mentality. You know what I miss? Being 4 years younger. Mid-20s just flew away.
Yeah, I feel really bad for the teenagers. They went in as kids and came out as adults with little sense of direction.
Not feeling crap for sitting in an apartment all day and night, with no FOMO. People keeping their frickin' distance. I mean, it took a bit, but now people are right back to hovering over your shoulder in line.
Oh, I loved that. Why the frick do people breathe down your neck in lines? It doesn't make it go any faster. I hate grocery shopping once again.
Not having to talk to people, and having time to do extra stuff around the house. I miss having 6 feet of personal space. I miss our planet Earth getting a break for the first time in a long time. In BC, we had whales return to regions that they'd left long ago, and births went up. The Venetian canals ran with visibly clear water. Dolphins around the world went up rivers, estuaries, and waterways that they hadn't visited in decades. It was eye-opening. There was a wildlife documentary called The Year the Earth Changed about this. It's great and devastating at the same time. Working from home, I really liked it, to be honest. I miss my dead family members.
Oof, me too. And not being able to celebrate their lives with a funeral.
How about common courtesy if people were ill? People staying home or masking up when sick. Now we're back to disgustingly ill people hacking and coughing all over with zero regard for others. It's gross. My dog Björn. He died January 2021, but I got to spend every day of 2020 at home with him. You know what I miss? Being left the heck alone. I miss nothing. Working for the ambulance, there was so much stress for such a long time. I didn't see family for ages. Lots of people immensely sick didn't receive the treatment they needed because of that pandemic. I was alone in the flat for such a long time, it frickin' sucked. I was working in an ER during the pandemic and have so much respect for what you did. Working in EMS has always been hard, but the pandemic took everything up a notch. Thank you for what you did and continue to do for your community. Time. I had time. I was just starting to understand myself, as I'm an addict, and that time gave me the ability to actually look inward and make strong, necessary changes to essentially grow up and become a better person. Nothing. I was an essential worker, mail carrier, and I worked my butt off. No extra pay either. The drive home from work was about the only joy of being an essential at that time because the streets were post-apocalyptically empty.
Yeah, I was an essential worker as well in Arkansas, where the general mentality was that COVID was a hoax. We got overworked while other businesses went under without the less crowded public areas mentioned in the other comments.
I'm surprised I haven't seen this mentioned earlier, but not getting sick and finally feeling like anyone cared about my immunosuppression. I've been on immunosuppressive medication to control my ankylosing spondylitis since I was 18. I'm supposed to skip doses while I'm unwell. During COVID, it was finally normal to take precautions like wearing a medical mask in public and not being forced to attend crowded work meetings where half the people were hacking and coughing. I literally didn't get sick once in 2 years until being forced to return to office, and then I got COVID within 2 weeks. Wouldn't you know it, skipping a few doses every 1 to 2 months due to getting sick actually had a huge impact on my quality of life. During COVID, I had 0 flare-ups while pre- and post-COVID. I've had several scary flare-up episodes causing weeks of agonizing pain. It's also nice that people pretended to care about immunocompromised folks. My friends would go out of their way to cancel plans if they felt unwell. Just 2 months ago, we were hanging out with some fairly close friends, and 2 hours in, one of them admitted, "Oh yeah, I've had a fever for 3 days, but I thought I could tough it out with Advil." And sure enough, a few days later, I got sick. So I totally sympathize with all of the horrible downsides of the pandemic, but it was basically the only time I was able to get an upper hand on my chronic disease and not feel pressured by society to just suck it up and deal with communicable diseases. Permission to be a homebody without judgment. Masks on sick people. Social distance. Why are you breathing down my neck in the self-checkout line? Back up. It's the same wait time either way. The answer's nothing. I worked frontline healthcare and I wondered if I was going to get sick and die or kill my whole family too until the vaccine came out. At no point did I get a raise, a bonus, a vacation, or unemployment. Hey, but my workplace put up a "Thank you nurses" paper banner. Great. Oh, and all of your neighbors banged pots and pans as a thank you while you were trying to sleep, right? I'm not medical staff, but my job takes place in a hospital. I'm in administration. I saw how ragged the nurses were being run, and I felt so bad for them. The return of wildlife and cleaner air and face masks. I miss the illusion that the majority of people cared about others. Peace and quiet. Actually, having no stress and being able to just exist and mind your own business. Being rested and getting enough sleep for the first and probably the last times. And then not working for 5.5 months. That was nice.
Damn, you had no stress during the pandemic? I lost 10% of my body weight and developed stress-induced insomnia that I'm only just now starting to recover from.
Yeah, it does seem like there were two distinct experiences for those of us who lived in places where there was serious quarantine. It probably comes down to a mix of whether you were an introvert or extrovert, what kind of work you did, and just how terminally online and updated on world affairs you were. Luckily, I was introverted as heck, I loved gaming, and basically lived in my own little world, so it was mitigated fairly well for me. Society as a whole has gotten a lot meaner since then, so I guess I missed the brief period where we almost all got along. The quiet. It's like the Earth stood still for a while.
The Earth didn't, civilization did. The natural world tried to reclaim a little bit of its domain when we had to stop destroying it for a moment.
I miss pretty much everything except the people dying. Staying home and not being judged for it. Also, masks, because I like hiding my face. Social distancing, or stimulus checks. Stay away from me and give me the money. It was a good time to be alive. Nothing. I was in change of safety for an essential public service. We were told we weren't allowed to close down, but also got zero assistance in obtaining PPE, relief workers, childcare, or priority status for vaccinations. I was constantly dealing with angry, irrational members of the public, anxious and depressed and angry co-workers. I had zero medical or public health training, but I had to write safety protocols and make decisions knowing that if I made a mistake, lots of people might die. Because of staff shortages, I had to do my regular full-time job, plus all the additional work of managing COVID safety, plus take over another department's work, normally done by 3 full-time employees. I did not get paid any extra. But I was told to do all of my paperwork at home, which was awful since I shared a tiny apartment with 2 roommates and literally didn't even have a desk at home. 4 months into lockdown, my cat got cancer and died. I then had to help evacuate my grandmother and cousins from a wildfire. Oh, and my doctor retired, so I couldn't get my medication refilled for about a year. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to Am I the Genius? The beginning, when we were all in it together, and then it devolved into the whole mask or no mask and vaccine and anti-vax bullcrap. Ugh. Tiger King and Animal Crossing New Horizons. That game was like Xanax during the first few months of lockdown. No traffic, remote work, cuddling my dog anytime I wanted, distance from strangers, and the excuse to decline invites. I miss staying at home and not having to interact with people. People being more considerate of one another. Now it feels like every man for themselves. Not having to see or engage with people. People wearing masks in public places or staying home when they were sick. Now it's back to people openly coughing in your face.
I went to a GP clinic a few months ago. I was sat in the waiting area when the man behind me did the dirtiest, phlegmiest cough on my neck. I felt the air and the spit all over my neck as he coughed. I've never gotten up from a chair and moved so quickly in my life. People are frickin' gross, man.
Hand sanitizer at gas pumps. Pandemic or not, some people just don't wash their hands. Not being obliged to shake hands. You could just nod at each other and go on. I still do this after I saw stats about how many of us actually wash our hands. Much less how many of us wash our hands correctly. Water, soap, and then water, people. At the peak of the pandemic, my second daughter was born, and my first was 2 years old. I still remember having to have my temperature taken every time I ran out to the car to get something and return to the hospital. It's probably selfish and messed up on a deeper level, but something about protecting your babies during a time like that helps to seal the bond.
It felt like it was us against the world, and we just explored the beautiful park near our house every day in our little insulated bubble. I'm going to go ahead and say I really don't miss anything from the pandemic. Oh, I miss people staying a few feet away from me in line. Being furloughed with my employment pay is probably the closest I'll get to feeling what retirement is like. It's completely okay to just be. The rat race paused for a while. There wasn't stress to go places or do things you didn't want to. The pressure to prove myself was just off. The lack of smog gave us glimpses of the mountains, skylines, and countryside vistas previously hidden by said same smog. People wearing masks. Like, if you're sick, just wear one. Be thoughtful of others. If you're not sick, then fine, don't wear a mask. But my God, I'm so tired of people coming into the store I work at, coughing their lungs out and talking about how they don't feel good and spreading their disgusting sickness everywhere. I should add I was an essential worker, so I never got the time off. I was incredibly overworked, and people were either very nice to me or the rudest possible. I worked at a grocery store, and people either thanked me, why, or they accused me of keeping all of the toilet paper and bleach in the back for ourselves. I miss having optimism that life would get better post-pandemic. Somehow, things have gotten even worse, and Elon frickin' Musk is making decisions that have messed things up even more for me and my income. The pandemic gave me severe depression and anxiety, so not really much. I'm still dealing with the after effects to this day. Getting paid to stay home and do essentially nothing. Spending tons of time with my kids. Also, my kids loved that the school gave us school food for them to eat at home, so I miss them being excited for us to go pick up the weekly school food. As a lunch lady during that time, it warms my heart hearing that at least someone was excited for the food. I miss how, for a while, it felt like we were all in this weird collective confusion together. I miss working from home. My husband's company hit them with a return-to-office order for next year. Nobody on his team is from the same regional office. They were hired during the pandemic without location being taken into account because of the work from home. They're all having to drive an hour or more to the nearest regional office to sit on frickin' Zoom meetings with each other exactly like they do now. It is so damned stupid. That fat check I got at the end of it after having gotten furloughed from my job and not collecting the pay bi-weekly or even monthly, but collecting it all at once when lockdown was over. Other than that, I was mentally hanging on by a string. I legitimately felt like the world would never be the same again and like it was ending. Life had a very anxious feel for me existentially. For that, I don't know how some of you were at so much peace. The money I was making delivering DoorDash and Uber Eats. I was working my butt off while the gas was the cheapest in 15 years. I built up my savings account, paid off my debt, and felt financially secure for once. I mean, this is a truly unique angle. I frankly would never have expected anyone to seize the opportunity to make a greater than normal amount of money being a DoorDash or Fedora driver, to be honest. I thought it was exclusively a profession used to exploit desperate people, or at best something that a few people did in their spare time. So I'm actually really glad to see that some people used it as a net positive in their lives. God damn, you guys, frickin' nothing. I worked in healthcare. I got to work 80+ hours a week, and in my flipping minuscule time away from work, I got to see people frickin' whining about being home. I honestly hope that every single person who complained about time at home gets horrendous paper cuts in their finger and toe webbing for the rest of their lives. Fudge all of you.
I'm right there with you, buddy. I got frickin' COVID from a patient before we even knew what it was. Thought it was weird flu, and that gave me renal failure. Put me on dialysis, but I've got young kids, bills to pay, and the hospital doesn't run itself. So I put on my big boy pants and went back to work. I finally got my transplant this year, so it turned out okay, but frick.
What's crazy about the pandemic is that instead of it dividing us, I feel like it brought us together. My family was closer than ever. We quarantined together. I got to live with my boyfriend. We had a great time just avoiding everything together. I miss it. Now, my sister lives across the country, and I'm long distance with my boyfriend for at least a couple of years. And now I'm lonely. I was an essential worker, so I miss everybody thanking our essential heroes for a solid week until that went away. It was also cool to be deemed essential, yet hazard pay wasn't in the equation whatsoever. No social obligations. I feel like I was a completely different person. I was a new mum with a 10-month-old. I had all of this time to bond with my baby, and it was amazing. Then, as he got older, I had all of this time to prepare activities and really be intentional with our time together. It was really nice. Margaritas to go.
I miss our neighborhood hangouts. There are 5 houses on our street, and we all used to meet at the cul-de-sac every Sunday afternoon at 6 feet apart and enjoy each other's company. The group spanned from little kids to empty nesters. Once everything went back to normal, the hangouts stopped. No traffic, but also normalizing wearing masks if you're ill at all. I still personally mask up when I'm sick, but I'd really like it if more people did it too. I miss when people took it seriously. The slowed down pace of life. More wild animals, less pollution, and working at home. I miss working from home being actively encouraged and fully supported. I miss people being respectful and keeping 6 feet away from strangers. And I miss people being kind to one another and finding ways to support one another as a community. Wearing masks so that if you looked like crap, nobody could see you. But today's the 4-year anniversary of my husband's death from COVID, and I miss him so much. Having an excuse to turn down invites to any kind of social gathering. Remote work without the threat of return to office, and not having to be around buttholes almost everywhere I go. The bullies at my workplace just couldn't do their thing. We were all working from home, and when we had to do anything on Zoom, it was all recorded, which is a bully's nightmare. They couldn't corner anyone in their break room, they couldn't help themselves to somebody else's lunch, they couldn't alleviate their boredom by making somebody else feel uncomfortable. The poor souls. The only thing they could do was their actual job. By the way, we are still in a pandemic, guys. Only the emergency status has dropped. We're actually in our 10th wave. Higher numbers than 73% of the entire pandemic. To answer the question, I miss when everyone masked. As somebody who's bedbound by COVID, going to doctors to try and find help is so risky, because nobody seems to care to protect each other anymore. This answer was written in December 2024. Nothing. It was difficult. I want that time added back onto my lifespan because it was just one big bullcrap instance of suspended animation and the worst of humanity. Having foxes come into my little garden in the night. I still see them in the early hours if I'm out running, but it's like they had free reign during the start of lockdown and they made the most of it. Beautiful creatures. Lockdown. Home office. The state being forced to change the crappy slavery-exploiting capitalist system for a little while. You know, school firearm tragedies didn't happen over Zoom. I think what we're learning from all of these is that the pandemic was an introvert's paradise and an extrovert's nightmare. Reasonable prices before all of the inflation took over from newly created unbacked trillions of US dollars. Sitting one person per pair of seats on the bus. I hate it when someone sits next to me. Empty streets. I got to explore so much on my bicycle, and it was surreal riding past a lot of places that would normally be bustling with big crowds. You know, it was wild to watch nature begin to take the urban areas back so quickly when humans weren't around. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all of the stories. And if you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Everything linked in the description.